Since he was a child, this young man was extremely different from others. Instead of playing like other children, he loved to sit in the library for hours reading books. One day, his father ordered a man named Begin to go to the sea to exploit its resources. Luen told the man not to take the road near the southern mountain range because the mana flow there was strangely abnormal. "What do you mean?" Begin looked at Lord Adele. The Lord was also bewildered, having no idea what the hell his son was talking about. A few days later, during a night of thunderstorms and raging winds, Begin finally returned, much to the Lord's relief. He had to take a different, longer route, and in doing so he avoided a disaster thanks to the young master, Luen. The road near the southern mountain range had been attacked by monsters. This news left the Lord utterly shocked, as Luen had predicted that anyone who passed that way would run into trouble. Mr. Begin had saved his own skin thanks to listening to Luen's advice. "Do you think he can sense the mana in the air?" The Lord didn't know what to make of it either. If it was true, Luen would be the future of the Adele family. From that day on, he showed a natural talent for magic. At the age of 6, Luen could already sense mana and could summon it. At 7 years old, when Luen turned 10, he surpassed countless descendants of prestigious families at the Xenix Magic Academy, the top magic academy in the Radiant Kingdom, to become the valedictorian of the entering class. People called him a genius. Luen began to dream of the future. He would elevate his family's name to new heights, but his journey came to a halt at the academy. On his first day of class, Luen realized he was nothing. He couldn't even release mana externally. Before the eyes of the entire class, Luen failed due to his mana disorder. For a mage, the inability to release mana from one's body is nothing short of a terrible curse. In that moment, everyone started to scrutinize his background. A mediocre family, and he himself had no talent at all. Their attitude did a complete 180, from respect to contempt. One of them deliberately bumped Luen's shoulder and sneered, "Oops, I bumped into a useless bastard. Hope I don't become as worthless as him." Luen was someone who couldn't perform magic in a magic academy, surrounded by those who had been jealous of him from the very beginning. Now he was nothing more than a plaything for their amusement. Luen thought everything would end there, but he had no idea that a miracle was waiting at the deepest depths of despair. When the player's artifact was activated, his life turned a new page. Luen felt as if his body was sinking deep into water. He was in a vast, endless space. A system window appeared. "You are the incarnation of Draka, the world destroyer." "What the hell?" Luen was still trying to understand. Suddenly, a giant with glowing red eyes appeared before him. He saw the giant's lips moving as if trying to say something to him. Abruptly, everything before his eyes changed in a whirlwind. A few hours earlier, at the Xenix Academy training grounds, Professor Dodo, who taught combat magic, was having the class practice. "Now it's Luen's turn." The professor only asked him to create a fireball. "Aim at the dummy 1 meter away." A fireball was a type of magic that any student could perform with ease, except for someone like him who couldn't use magic at all. Luen was extremely tense. Could he do it this time? Professor Dodo looked at him with an encouraging gaze. Luen began to focus. "That's right, I can't give up." Luen conjured a fireball. Its size made the other students gasp in awe. How can one person have that much mana? Professor Dodo frowned, filled with anticipation. Luen was just as anxious. Now all he had to do was release it like throwing a ball. But then it happened again. Luen's arm began to tremble. His insides churned as if he had just ridden a roller coaster. And so he threw up his entire breakfast. I can't do it. Luen wiped his mouth. Professor Dodo still tried to encourage him, but Luen truly couldn't release the mana. He didn't even know how. The professor was completely helpless. "You're already a final year student, yet you can't even perform a basic spell like a fireball. How will you ever pass the graduation exam?" "I'm sorry. I'll practice more." Although Luen said that in his heart, he was cursing himself for being useless trash. In this training exercise, the students needed to create 10 fireballs and hit the target, but he couldn't even cast the spell, let alone hit the dummy. At this rate, he couldn't even become a third-rate mage. How can a talentless hack be the top of the entering class? He's truly a disgrace to the academy. The whispers and familiar phrases once again echoed through the class. Because Luen was a noble from an unknown family who had snatched the title of valedictorian from students of prestigious backgrounds, he had been disliked from the start. But the bullies were just pests. What truly broke Luen's spirit was that he was making no progress, not even a glimmer of hope. It was all because of the mana disorder curse from 6 years ago. Luen now asked himself, how much longer could he endure this? In the academy's main hall, the two bullies who always picked on Luen blocked his path again. Well, look who it is. If it isn't Luen the dullard, isn't it time for you to pack your bags and go home? It wasn't just his peers. Even the underclassmen had given him the nickname Luen the dullard. Because of you, the entire final year's academic record is being dragged down. Why don't you just get lost and go home already? About that backwater territory of yours, ha-ha. Lewis's face darkened, but he remained silent at their taunts. Seeing that he wasn't fighting back, they pushed it even further. If you don't have any skills, you should at least have some wealth. It was only after coming here that I even heard of the Adele family. My dad even said they're just a bunch of empty vessels making a lot of noise. At this point, Lewis couldn't take it anymore. He spun around and punched the blonde guy right in his damn face, knocking him to the ground. Say one more thing. What about my dad, huh? Lewis couldn't stand it when they insulted his family. You bastard! The blonde-haired guy clutched his profusely bleeding nose. Benphone, you need to know when to stop. Who the hell do you think you are to start trouble with my father and my family? Do you have any idea who my father is? The other guy charged forward but was immediately met with a punch to the gut from Lewis, causing him to double over, trembling and unable to stand up. You arrogant bastard. You dare hit me? Benphone was so furious that he used combat magic right here in the academy. Isn't he afraid of being expelled? Go to hell! Faced with this magical attack, Lewis couldn't move. Hearing the commotion, Professor Idle rushed over to intervene, but it was too late. Lewis took the full force of his magical attack. He thought he was a goner for sure, but now he was in a different space, facing a giant cloaked figure and a familiar-looking system. Luen Adele. The man's voice calling his name startled Luen. Gradually, Luen returned to the world. The voice calling his name now belonged to Helen, a high-level healing mage. Where am I? Lewis sat up with a jolt, startling Helen. Louis felt a bit dizzy, but he could sit up. More importantly, that dream just now. It was so vivid as if he had actually experienced it in reality. Helen said he had been unconscious for almost a day. Luckily, your condition hasn't worsened. They still need to monitor you, but Lewis looks remarkably healthy for someone who just took a direct lightning strike. There are no wounds, no burns, and no internal injuries whatsoever. Helen had never seen a case like his. Even Lewis himself couldn't believe he was still alive. Lightning itself is a fearsome magic that can incinerate a body in an instant, and on top of that, he took a direct hit, yet his body was completely intact as if nothing had happened. Excuse me for a moment. Someone entered through the door. Helen said she would go check on the test results first. The visitor was Professor Idle. He stood with his arms crossed and asked about Lewis's health. After learning that Lewis was as healthy as an ox, he said, "That's a relief." The professor mentioned that a meeting was being held among the professors regarding this incident. First of all, Benphone will be expelled for using powerful offensive magic with intent to kill, spreading false rumors about the Adele family, and for assaulting and bullying you. Based on all of these events, the teachers have reached a verdict. Of course, Luen, you will also be punished for laying a hand on Ben. You will be required to participate in the Academy's volunteer activities for 1 month. After explaining everything, the professor had one more thing to ask Luen. Student, are you by any chance in possession of an artifact? What, sir? Luen was surprised by the professor's question. If he had an artifact, he wouldn't have been bullied in the first place. In any case, considering its value and rarity, the head of the Adele family would have surely used it for the family's benefit. The professor pondered. Lewis was curious why Professor Idle would ask him such a question. Back then, when the professor ran to Lewis, he was certain he saw a red light enveloping the boy's body right before the lightning struck, like a high-grade artifact was offering protection. Protecting you and repelling Ben's spell. What are you talking about, sir? Lewis asked innocently. Suddenly, he remembered the dream from earlier. Could they be related? Aish, I must be going crazy, Lewis thought to himself. He confirmed once more that he didn't have an artifact. Professor Idle nodded without another word and left, leaving Lewis to wonder just what he was thinking. What Lewis had experienced was no different from a dream. The artifact. Draka, the world destroyer and player. Lewis had heard another phrase, too. He tried hard to recall it. It seemed to be status window. The moment he thought of the phrase, a blue screen suddenly appeared before his eyes, making him jump. What the hell is this? Helen, who had just opened the door, rushed in to ask how he was. Lewis immediately pointed at the panel. "Do you see that? The blue panel? What are you rambling about?" "Lewis, did the lightning strike mess with your head?" Helen asked curiously. She couldn't see it, which proved that only Luen could. On the panel was information about Luen, the incarnation of Draka. Draka was a sorcerer who was destroyed along with his world after pursuing infinite power. Since birth, he had lacked mana. Therefore, strength was the source of his power. Luen is a player and can open a status window and infinitely increase his strength by completing quests. "It's nothing. My eyes are just playing tricks on me." Luen deflected so Helen wouldn't think he had mental problems. According to the test results, Luen was completely normal and was allowed to return to the dorms. Today was truly the strangest day of Luen's life. He survived a direct lightning strike completely unscathed, met a red-eyed man in another dimension, and saw a status window. It called him the incarnation of Draka. Combined with Professor Idle's questions, perhaps the sorcerer Draka's artifact had been transferred into him. Lewis opened the status window. Looking at it again, a quest window appeared. A repeatable daily quest consisting of 100 punches, 100 kicks, and 100 roundhouse kicks each, for a reward of 10 strength points and to open. Punching and kicking skills are related to strength, I guess. But Lewis wondered how that would help him become a mage. "For now, I'll just give it a try." Lewis took a deep breath, tensed his muscles, and threw a punch. One on the left, one on the right. The count increased, which motivated him. At this rate, he'd be done soon. Lewis threw a third punch, but the count didn't increase because he swung his arm incorrectly. Lewis roughly understood how it worked and got excited. All right, time to punch the right way. The moon was high and everyone was sound asleep, while Lewis was panting, drenched in sweat. It was finally done. Lewis was curious what the quest reward would be. Suddenly his body felt light and refreshed. All his fatigue vanished. It felt like something even more fundamental than mana. Lewis hadn't felt this way in a long time. This was the feeling one could only get when they truly became stronger. Let's see. Lewis immediately tested it by throwing a punch. The speed, air resistance, and destructive power had all changed compared to before. It made him excited. The strength seeping into his magic had truly gotten stronger. Now, the skill reward was what made him curious. He opened the status window to see it. It was called Power Circle, a passive skill that replaces mana with strength. The mana circle changes to a power circle. All magic and movements are now influenced by your strength. Replacing the mana circle with a power circle, this meant that Lewis's mana would be replaced by strength. He placed his hand on his chest to feel it. Anyone who learns or senses mana has a mana circle surrounding their heart. It plays a role in releasing and enhancing mana, increasing stats depending on the length and amount of mana a mage can control. Lewis possessed 4 mana circles. That was more than his peers, but because of his own defect, they were all useless. After a moment, to Lewis's astonishment, his mana circles had actually disappeared. The powerful circle spinning wildly now must be the power circle. Lewis felt confused. If he didn't have a mana circle, he couldn't be a mage. If this new circle couldn't do what the mana circle did, what would happen to him? Lewis felt a bit disappointed that his life as a mage was about to end like this. But his greatest talent was being optimistic in the face of misery, so for now, he needed to try it out. Lewis tried to summon a fireball. The casting speed was faster than usual, which surprised him. It even looked more powerful. The moment he saw the fireball's size, Lewis realized something. This must be the power of the treasure. Sorry, Professor Two-Face. Magic has a basic activation mechanism. Before releasing its power, it needs 10 seconds to charge. But Lewis could skip those 10 seconds and create a fireball directly. With the strength in his body, Lewis clenched his fists in excitement. Is this the power of the treasure? What's this? The status window appeared again, giving information about Mage's Frenzy. Focus your mana into your body and attack the enemy. When you cast magic, a strength enhancement effect will be added, and the magic attack will deal additional physical damage. At first, Lewis didn't understand a thing, but that mage, Draka, also had the same mana disorder curse as him, and he fought by concentrating mana into his punches. How on earth did he come up with a method like this? Louis was incredibly impressed by Draka's perseverance and creativity. A new quest was added. It was to practice using the Mage's Frenzy method. Use the power circle and strength to attack a target. Lewis had never even thought of this method. If he could become a mage that way, he definitely had to try. Lewis cast a fireball, using it like a fist aimed at the target. All right. Lewis was overjoyed as he successfully used magic for the first time. Impact on the training dummy. Mission complete. And he was rewarded with 10 additional strength points. Not only that, but Louis's spirits had also improved significantly. He happily lay down on the ground. Lewis had always failed at releasing magic, and in the end, he succeeded by using his fists. At that moment, Lewis grew curious about Draka. What kind of person was he? But his body was gradually starting to feel heavy. What the? Did he train all night and actually fall asleep right here? He's probably not dead, right? He took a direct hit from a lightning bolt and is totally fine. The whispers around him woke Lewis up. As he stumbled to his feet, the other students jumped back as if they'd seen a strange creature. "The weirdo's awake! You scared the hell out of us!" Lewis had no idea why they were all gathered here to watch him sleep. Was it their first time seeing a handsome guy sleeping on the ground or something? Well, it made sense. For a noble to suddenly skip the dorm, with its warm blankets and soft mattress, to sleep on the ground was definitely a strange sight. It's real. Lewis, were you drinking? Drinking what? I was just tired, so I slept. Bye. Watching Louis walk away with his chest puffed out and head held high made them look at each other. It was like Lewis had become a different person. They saw the shredded scarecrow. Only the pole stuck in the ground was left. Was that Louis doing? Whoa, no way. Louis returned to the dormitory. His friend, Giasone Diamond, a 6th year, was brushing his teeth and looked at him curiously. Huh? Were you out all night? What happened? You don't usually leave the dorm for that long. It's none of your business, Louis replied coldly to Giasone's enthusiasm. He was the eldest son of the famous mineral mining diamond family. At least Giasone still treated him like a normal person, but he was also an alcoholic, and a womanizer who often snuck out of the academy. Don't tell me you went to see some girl. Could it be that after getting hit, you finally learned how to have some fun? Tell me about it. Louis threw his shirt right in Giasone's face to shut him up. Louis soaked in the bathtub, enjoying the feeling of being reborn. He suddenly remembered he still had his daily quest. Today was 100 punches and 200 kicks and roundhouse kicks each, but the reward stayed the same. Louis shot upright. Don't tell me it's just going to double every day from now on while the reward doesn't? It's true. Nothing comes easy. But if he could become a mage with this method, then it wouldn't be a problem at all. 1 month later, Luen diligently completed his daily quests. Just as he predicted, the requirements kept increasing, while the reward for that day was jack squat. If Luen didn't complete a quest, all his progress would reset to 0 the next day. That's why Luen never skipped a single daily quest. Looking on the bright side, at least the quest's requirement didn't go up to 3,000 reps, any more than that, and Luen would have dropped dead from the quests before even becoming a mage. For the entire past month, Luen had been diligently throwing 3,000 punches, kicks, and spinning kicks every single day, and he even unlocked a new skill, passive skill. Martial arts. Increases the body's abilities, making it stronger and more agile based on training. The image of Luen in his classmates' eyes also changed, from a bookworm who always paid attention in class to a young man who sits in the back of the classroom and just dozes off. Is that all you see? He practically lives on the training grounds these days, and all he does is practice punching and kicking. They thought Luen was doing something to deal with his mana disorder, but not a single one of them believed he would change as time went on. Luen trained while searching for clues about Draka, but there was absolutely no information or any similar names. Not only that, but things like World Destroyer, Player, Status Window, or Quests also yielded no clues. Just who is this Draka guy? This question kept circling in Luen's mind. Luen, come over here. Jason suddenly called Luen over, asking if he had heard, but Luen didn't know a thing. So you really don't know? That's why you can just sit here reading so leisurely. The sympathetic look on Jason's face made Luen curious. The hot news was that the head of the Adele family was here. In other words, Luen's father had come for a visit. Luen immediately ran to find his father. He was with Professor Ido. The moment he saw his son, his face lit up. Luen, my son, you're here. It had been 6 years since Luen had entered the academy and hadn't seen his father. He said he was doing great. Luena, Luen's younger sister, had grown up and was now passionate about swordsmanship. She said she would protect her weak older brother. Ha ha! I'm so embarrassed. Luen scratched his head at his sister's boldness. His father's sudden visit made Luen afraid that he knew about the bullying. Luen looked at his father with a resolute gaze. Father, I'm doing very well. What do you mean? His father didn't quite understand. Luen said that he wasn't hurt at all, physically or mentally. His father took a sip of tea. He had stopped by today to ask his opinion on leaving the academy. If things got too difficult, Luen could always return to their domain at any time. Actually, I figured that's why you came, Father. But Father, I think I found a way. Luen spoke honestly. He even wanted his father to promise him something. For the upcoming exam, Luen promised to get a good score on the practical test. In return, if he failed again, he would do as his father wished. Seeing Luen's determination, his father could only return to the mansion. After their talk, the final exam finally arrived. The first test was Introduction to Magic. The exam consisted of 2 parts, a written test and a practical test. The practical test was further divided into 4 parts, target identification, mana measurement, practical combat, and a solo duel. As someone with a mana disorder, Luen could only get a perfect score on the written test. The top spot in the practical test always went to Miko of the prestigious Garyhill family. However, Luen was certain that this time, things would be different. He would definitely kick Miko's ass and become #1 on the server. After the written test, the students moved to the training grounds for the first part of the practical exam. Jason looked at Luen with concern. You've been a little strange lately. Do you have some kind of plan for today's practical test? Hearing Luen say he was going to do things a new way made Jason happy for him. It had been a long time, since Jason had seen his roommate truly living like a human being. Luen, what are you doing here? Don't tell me you're planning on taking the practical test with that body of yours. That asshole Miko brought a few of his lackeys over to mock Luen. So what if I am? Luen replied softly. Miko put a hand on his shoulder and whispered, as the top student. If I had to give advice to someone who's failed the practical test 6 times like you, I'd say this. Instead of coming here to humiliate yourself, why don't you just give up now? Who knows? I don't think your advice is very useful. Luen's response pissed Miko off. He used to be so meek. So why is he so confident now? It drove him crazy. I'll show you in the solo duel. Just you wait. The first part of the test, target identification, began. The official name was multiple target takedown. The rules were simple. To test the number of targets shot down in a single casting. 1. However, this year's test was different from previous years in that the difficulty had been increased. The targets moved continuously. Because of that, the average score was abysmally low. Some students didn't even hit a single target. 2. We only increased the difficulty a little and the results are already this bad. The quality of the students this year is so poor. The proctoring professors whispered amongst themselves. Professor, it's a bit too early to be disappointed. It's Miko's turn, sir. Please watch. Professor Eric from the potion brewing department spoke up. He's also Miko's uncle. Miko stepped onto the field with 2 blue flames in his hands. He was going to show Lewis the difference between them. Begin, Miko. He launched a web that covered the targets. Even if they moved, they would still be within his sights. The students watched in awe. Wow, that's Miko for you. He hit so many targets with a single spell. Professor Eric shot up from his seat, clapping loudly. See, the boy is a worthy descendant of the Gary family line. Right, Hill? At this rate, Miko is truly the pride of our academy. He will certainly be our representative at this year's grand festival. All right, Professor Eric. Faced with his attitude, the headmaster of Tyrion X Academy, Nick, who was also a 7th Circle Archmage, spoke. He decided that they didn't need to watch the next students. Professor Hotto asked the headmaster to stay a little longer because it was Luen's turn. Luen Adele, you say? Is that kid still at this academy? The headmaster asked in surprise. But seeing Professor Hotto's passion, he decided to stay for a bit and see. Luen stepped onto the field, his heart pounding nervously. This was his chance to test his strength and regain his honor. Luen, you may begin, the supervising professor signaled. In the blink of an eye, he unleashed a barrage of fireballs. It left the professors astonished. Impossible! How many targets are there? The students were also amazed by the number of fireballs he created. Miko, though bitter, still believed Lewis was just a good-for-nothing. Even if you can cast 100 fireballs, it doesn't mean you can actually launch a single one. Lewis stomped his foot, leaped up, and activated time refraction. Distort and refract time for 30 seconds, increasing speed by 200%. This was a skill Luen had only recently learned. Time refraction allowed him to move with unnatural speed to anywhere he wanted. Thanks to this, when Luen threw a punch, it looked just like he was firing a blast of mana. After a minute of bombardment, the surrounding area was in ruins, as if an earthquake had just struck. The professors and students were frozen for a few seconds, feeling as if they had just witnessed someone rise from the dead. Lewis smiled with satisfaction. This time he had really done it. Luen, 27 targets. The supervising professor gathered his composure to announce the result. What was that? Did he cast magic on his hands and then just punch with them? 27 is a record for this test. How did he move so fast? A flurry of questions and whispers spread among the students. Then, applause erupted. The headmaster stood up cheerfully. Luen, that was absolutely brilliant! The students also cheered and congratulated him. All of Luen's hard work had paid off. While some were happy, others were bitter. A prime example was Miko, who was so angry he couldn't control himself. The praise and recognition that always decorated his face was something Lewis hadn't experienced in the past 6 years. Now, a warmth spread through his chest. This was the euphoric feeling he had always longed for. In the professor's meeting, Professor Eric was extremely dissatisfied. Casting magic onto one's hands and then punching the target directly? You call that magic? I've never heard of any magic like that, but you know, magic has no limits, Professor Hotto retorted. Magic is a field where anything is possible. If it followed a rigid framework, it wouldn't be magic anymore, it would be mathematics. But Luen... The headmaster raised a hand, signaling for Professor Eric to shut his trap. The headmaster was extremely pleased to have witnessed the miracle Luen created today. It was a miracle of magic. Nevertheless, disagreements among the professors on this matter were unavoidable, especially Professor Eric. He cursed inwardly. Damn it, that brat Lewis has messed everything up. Meanwhile, Jason had his arm around Lewis's shoulder as they walked down the hallway. Hello, the ultimate mage has arrived! Oh, it's Lewis. You know my name? We've been in the same class for the past 6 years. A crowd of students surrounded Lewis, making him feel awkward. He immediately bolted for the dormitory, leaving Jason with a confused look. Just yesterday, no, this morning, Lewis was still a nobody at the academy. And now, everything had changed in an instant. He still preferred to be alone. Of course, there were still many who didn't like Lewis. A prime example was this blonde kid, Miko. In broad daylight, he brazenly walked into Louis's room, leaving Louis wondering what the hell he was thinking. You scored a few points with that thing that isn't even magic, and you're already acting all high and mighty. Your arrogance makes me sick, so I came here to remind you not to get too full of yourself. Lewis had no idea what he was talking about. He was probably just bitter about scoring lower. The person he'd looked down on for the past 6 years was him. What did you just say? That brat Miko lunged forward and grabbed Luen's collar. Luen calmly grabbed his hand and pulled it away, making Miko's arm tremble. He couldn't believe that Luen, who looked like such a weakling, was actually this strong. Miko, we both need to graduate. If you really want to put me in my place that badly, then wait until the one-on-one solo test and let's have a fair fight. Miko slapped Louis's hand away. You think you're worthy of fighting me? Someone like you who fails everything? After saying that, he immediately left. Inwardly, he cursed Lewis as an arrogant bastard. He's bound to fail the practical exam today anyway, so why would we even need a combat test? But then he looked at his arm, still trembling from where Lewis had grabbed it. He wondered if he was really a mage at all. The second test, mana efficiency measurement, has begun. This statue is of Kingram, an ancient goblin. It is the Academy's treasure and a rare artifact on the continent, with only a few in existence. 500 years ago, the Archmage Frost turned the Goblin Kingram into an artifact. While still alive, Kingram was imprisoned within this artifact, where it absorbs mana and is used as a sort of magical punching bag. This mana proficiency exam requires students to cast their magic at Kingram for a score, but the students can't stand Kingram because he's an impossibly tough grader. A score over 20 is considered amazing. One student summoned some lightning that looked pretty impressive, but Kingram just said, "Go back to your studies, you one-point mage. It's not too late to drop out, you know." The next student, who had been mocking the one before him, certainly made an impression on Kingram. Not a good one, but the impression of someone casting garbage magic for the first time. What is this pathetic magic? Did you mix it with plain water or something? That was 100% mana. The wretched elf, Jia-sun, returned to his seat screaming and scowling. Next up was Miko. He was just as nervous, attempting to attack Kingram with his strongest spell. "Are you the son of Josh Gary Hill?" In response to Kingram's question, Miko put on an air of arrogance. "That's right. I am the proud third son of Josh Gary Hill." Kingram burst out laughing. "Proud? Ha ha! Your father was a sniveling fool. He begged me to give him more points." Kingram judged Miko to be even worse than his father, giving him 27 points. "You're just a mediocre elf." "What the hell are you talking about?" Miko stood there, seething with rage as the professor signaled him to return to his seat and shut his mouth. Next was Louis's turn, and for some reason, he suddenly felt very anxious. "I am Louis Adele. It's an honor to meet you, sir." This was the first time Kingram had seen Louis's face, as he'd failed the target assessment tests in the past and couldn't advance to this stage. Louis began summoning Explosive Flame, a level 4 spell, causing the students to murmur in awe again. Kingram, however, was confused by Louis's stance, because what kind of mage stands like they're ready for a brawl? But Louis really was ready for a brawl. He jumped up, channeling mana to his leg, and kicked Kingram straight in the face. The supervising professor was absolutely shocked to see Louis channeling mana from his hands down to his feet and then detonating it in an instant. Looking at this technique, the spell's energy output was at least level 5. He landed, panting heavily. He had definitely cast Explosive Flame correctly. But why was Kingram reacting that way? "Who are you? Are you Draca?" "Draca?" The crowd was confused, wondering if he'd mistaken Louis for someone else. But Louis knew exactly who Kingram was referring to, a person of whom there was no trace, even after he had scoured through documents for the past 2 months. You know Draca?" Louis hoped Kingram would tell him more. As for Kingram, he found this all incredibly interesting. To think he would meet the embodiment of Draca at this academy. Kingram asked for Louis's name. He would remember that name, and with that, he decided to leave. The professor wanted to know Louis's score, but Kingram said he would tell him later, as there were too many people around. He also brought an end to this bland evaluation. This startled the professor. According to the school's principles, Kingram was required to give an evaluation. This contract had to be upheld for 500 years, after the great Archmage Frost Ignite passed away. "Enough! How dare you mention principles in front of me? For years, I've been the one forced to evaluate these brats who don't look anything like mages," Kingram fumed. He couldn't suppress the frustration that had built up for hundreds of years. But because of the contract, Kingram would give Louis a score. "Option 1 is 0, option 2 is 100. What do you want, my little destroyer, Louis?" He never expected the decision to be up to him. Of course, he wanted the 100 points. News that the notoriously strict Kingram had given Louis, the legendary last placer, a perfect 100 points started spreading throughout the academy. "You're stirring up trouble again, Louis." Louis was surprised to be approached by Professor Hado, because word of Kingram giving you 100 points has already reached the headmaster. So the headmaster has decided to give Louis a reward, as something like this has never happened before. First, the professor handed Louis a piece of paper. It mentioned the treasure vault, which made Louis curious. The professor then signaled for him to follow, and the two of them went to a secret staircase. This was the only restricted area in the entire academy, so Louis wondered why the professor was leading him here. When they arrived at the door to the treasure vault, Professor Hado had to wait outside while Louis had to enter alone, even though he had no idea what was going on. But the professor said it was a reward, so he figured he'd just go in and see. Inside was a vast room filled with priceless treasures Louis had only ever heard about. This must be the vault of the great Archmage, Frost Ignis. "You look lost," a voice echoed, making Louis jump. Kingram suddenly appeared in the room. What's more, he was no longer a stone statue. This was the only place Kingram was allowed to use his physical body. Thanks to the Archmage's mana that fills this room, he can exist in his original form instead of as an artifact. Louis nodded, also wondering why. Kingram had just said he didn't know his own true worth. "Literally, you have absolutely no idea what your true value is. Even the magical artifact you're using is the same as Draca's." The fact that Kingram knew about the artifact surprised Louis even more. It was an incredibly rare treasure, so Kingram wanted to know how Louis obtained it. More importantly, he wanted to know his relationship with Draca. But Louis himself was wondering just who Draca was. "How would I know if Draca is related to me?" Kingram felt helpless in the face of his ignorance and had no choice but to tell Lewis about Draca. He was an entity who one day sought to ascend to godhood. Draca paid a visit to the Zenith clan where I lived. Back then, Draca was small, short, and frankly unsightly. But he possessed such phenomenal power that no one in the Zenith clan could even fight back. Furthermore, with each passing day, Draca grew even stronger. Even if all the elves attacked him at once, they couldn't defeat him. From then on, the elves came to respect Draca, and Draca lived with them as a member of the clan. Draca even taught language and magic to the one who would lead the clan. That future leader was me, Kingram. He taught me for nearly 100 years. What? How can a human live for 100 years? Lewis was in disbelief. But Draca was not human. So your true identity is the Black Dragon, Dracagonia? It's just one surprise after another? Lewis couldn't believe that dragons actually existed. You had no idea. So dragons are the source of all magic? Lewis had heard something like this before, but he thought it was all just a legend. However, Draca couldn't use magic. That's why he created the fighting style that Lewis uses by channeling magic through his own limbs. Lewis felt a sense of empathy for Draca. He must have been treated the same way in the past. Draca created an ability that only he could use, a way of transforming magic into raw power, just as Lewis had done, grasping that power. Draca became the strongest being in the world. However, he wasn't satisfied with that and continued to expand his power endlessly. In the end, Draca destroyed everything, including himself. Lewis finally understood why Draca was called the Destroyer of Worlds. He couldn't even imagine it. Just how strong must Draca have been to destroy everything? A system notification popped up for a new achievement, finding a trace of Draca. The reward was the title, Comrade of the Elves, the skill Elven Fury, and the spirit Trang, the incarnation of power. Comrade of the Elves is a passive effect that increases affinity with elves and allows communication with them. Lewis didn't understand why he suddenly got a reward, but since it wasn't a power-up, he figured it was better than nothing. The active skill, Elven Fury, increases Louis's power by 300 for 30 seconds. The effect gradually increases while the skill is active. Cooldown, 3 minutes. Just hearing that, you can tell it's a totally broken skill. Finally, there was Trang. A sphere suddenly appeared in his hand. Looks like you just received your quest reward. Draca used to stare into space and talk to himself just like that. Kingram reminisced about the past. Lewis immediately asked about the sphere in his hand. That's Trang. Not an item, but an incarnation. He was always by Draca's side. How did I not realize it? Looking at the situation, Kingram guessed that Draca must have sealed him inside the Spirit Stone before he died. Trang is the incarnation of power, even though he's called a spirit. But he's not like a normal, cutesy spirit. He has a fiery temper. Every day he begged Draca to grant him endless power, but if you satisfy his hunger, he'll grant his master infinite power in return. You mean, that incarnation will be reborn from this stone? Kingram nodded. Looking at how the stone is cracking, it seems he's about to awaken. The stone shattered, and Lewis stared wide-eyed at the thing in his hands. This is a bear cub. Bear cub? How dare you call me a bear cub? The bear rubbed its eyes and even spoke, making Lewis even more curious. Stop calling me a bear, you punk. Just as Kingram said, this bear had a fiery temper. If you're not a bear, then what are you? Lewis had no idea what to call the creature in front of him. But Trang is an incarnation. He can become anything he wants. Watch this. I'll show you my true power. Trang puffed out his cheeks, getting ready to do something. But in the end, nothing happened. What the hell? Where did all my power go? Trang decided it must be because he was reborn with an empty stomach, so he demanded food from Lewis. Lewis had no idea what he ate, which made Trang extremely annoyed. Ugh, why is my master so useless this time? Whatever, I'm sleepy. Wake me up when it's time to eat. Lewis couldn't keep up with Trang's mood swings. He was more difficult to understand than any girl. Truly, some things never change. Watching Louis and Trang reminded Kingram of the old days, when he first faced Draca and Trang in the homeland of the Zenith tribe. He wondered what Louis would do next. By carrying on Draca's will, the power Lewis now holds will only make him stronger. It could lead him down the path of righteousness, or it could consume him completely. And so, Kingram wanted to know what Louis would do once he became stronger. The reason Lewis wanted power was to protect his loved ones from monsters and bring honor to his family name. and to prove himself to those who looked down on him and his family. Lewis smiled. He had too much to protect to let this opportunity slip by. I will live the life I want, for my loved ones, my family, and for myself. Kingram smiled. Not bad. I'll be watching your future with great interest. From then on, Lewis continued to complete his quests diligently each day. The only thing that changed was the little furball at his side. Trang's life consisted of only two things: eating and sleeping. Every time Louis woke him up to eat, Trang would open his mouth as wide as possible and devour the power Louis gave him. He was crazy about food and ate a ton, but despite eating so much, Trang was still only at 1 star. His special skill, Companion, allowed Louis to share 100% of Trang's growth, giving him 100 power points. All that daily feeding wasn't a waste after all. Every time Trang grew stronger, Lewis would receive a proportional amount of power. 1 star meant 100 points, 2 stars meant 200 points. Before he was sealed, Trang had reached 31 stars. Lewis was amazed. He didn't even have 1,000 points yet, and he was already this strong. Just how in the world did Draka become so terrifyingly powerful? Actually, besides doing quests, there are other ways to increase your power. But the price of that information is a drink for me. Fine. Don't talk then. Just don't blame me when you starve. Under Louis's threat, he finally spilled the beans. There are many ways to increase your power, like doing high-difficulty quests to get better rewards. You could forge items that boost your stats or find hidden treasures. You could even cook elf tendons to refine elixirs. But, Trang asserted, none of those methods are right for you. You need at least 1,000 power points just to unlock those quests. Besides, if your power increases too quickly, your body won't be able to handle it. Right now, you're basically just a toddler taking his first steps. And here I was, thinking I was already crazy strong. Turns out, this was only the beginning. His immediate goal was 1,000 points. Lewis trained every day to raise his score, and by the time he reached 930 points, the third test, the practical combat exam, officially began. In this exam, the mages will be attacking from the rear, so there's a possibility of friendly fire during the chaos. Therefore, this exam, testing the mages' risk management skills, might be the most important part. For example, when Jason was casting a fireball, he aimed it at the guarding knights. That got him disqualified immediately. The support team is the Forest Knights, here to ensure the students' safety and to evaluate their teamwork. The exam lasts for 10 days. It's all based on the points they earn. Each person will fight different monsters. On the final day, there will be 13 students with the top scores, so everyone is curious about what kind of monster will appear. A giant hydra emerged from the gate, growling, which made the students flinch. Hydras live in scattered herds across the continent, are larger than humans, and also possess intelligence. They have a violent nature, so wars between hydras and humans often break out. Sir, are you sure this is a good idea? What if someone gets killed by the hydra? Professor Two Swords immediately encouraged his students, saying that as mages, they must always remain rational to handle any situation. The test begins. The Forest Knights will be on the front lines to provide support. The mages attack from behind. Miko launched an ice spear at the hydra, but it immediately leaped up and aimed for him. Miko dodged, and Professor Two Swords shouted out a command. Miko wanted to get revenge for what happened the other day, but he was so scared he couldn't move. Professor Two Swords had to use his wood technique, summoning large vines to wrap around the hydra, restraining it so it wouldn't tear Miko to shreds. In the end, Miko was eliminated from the test. Professor Eric clenched his fists, furious that Miko had failed again. He would have to take matters into his own hands. Next up was Lewis's test. Since he was the only one to receive a perfect score from Kingram, Eric suggested he be evaluated differently from the other students. To ensure fairness, the headmaster understood his point, but they didn't have any other monsters. Eric had already planned for this. When the Forest Knights brought the Hydra, they also brought an ogre. Before Luen's test began, Professor Two Swords met with him to inform him about the change in difficulty. The Academy has high expectations for Luen ever since Kingram gave him a perfect score, so his target will be changed from a Hydra to an ogre. Luen's face twisted. Of all the monsters. Why make him fight an ogre? Trang scoffed. So your first real enemy is an ogre, huh? This is going to be fun to watch. The ogre's appearance was quite similar to the Hydra's, making Jason think it was the Hydra's leader. A guy standing next to him said, "You idiot, that's an ogre." Jason immediately felt uneasy and worried for Luen. Even the captain of the Forest Knights was confused. Although he had made the suggestion, there was no way they could let a student fight an ogre in an exam like this. Ogres look similar to hydras, but are many times stronger. They can crush a person's skull and break their spine with a single swing. The captain immediately questioned Professor Two Swords, but this was a direct order from the headmaster. It seems they want Louis to bet his life on this test. That's right. Louis stepped forward as the test taker. Seeing Louis's pale, delicate appearance, like that of a young master, he had no idea how he could possibly fight this ogre. The professor and the knights were supposed to protect Louis, but he's walking right past them. Hey, you're going the wrong way. Louis's position is behind the knights, but he's going to stand at the front. My spells are different from the others. If you stand in front, we can't protect you. It's not as easy to deal with as the Hydra. Yes, I know. Louis's answer made the captain frown. Why was he willing to bet his life on this? I have no other choice. That was all Louis could say. The captain couldn't see a hint of fear in him. It seemed Louis really was different from the others. Professor Two Swords signaled for Louis to get ready, then allowed the test to begin. The ogre broke free from its shackles and charged towards everyone. The knights shielded Louis, but he dashed past them, rushing towards the ogre. The captain yelled, "Don't! What are you doing?" Louis summoned a fireball in his hand. He threw a punch towards the ogre. The collision of the two terrifying powers created a shockwave. It was followed by an explosion of smoke and dust. The knight's captain silently prayed that Louis was still alive. From within the smoke, Louis's figure appeared. Not only was he alive, he was standing firm. Professor Two Swords smiled faintly, proud of his student. "Hey, you almost got yourself killed," the captain scolded Louis. Louis apologized to him. "But if I had told you beforehand, you definitely wouldn't have let me charge in. Besides, now isn't the time to talk. We need to finish this test." The ogre is still standing. "And it's even more furious now. Fall back. I know you're strong, but ogres are extremely dangerous. Stay put and let me handle this." But of course, Louis wouldn't just stand back and hide behind them. This was his test, so Louis would complete it himself. In his entire life, Louis had never even known what the hell an ogre was. It was 5 times his size and bloodthirsty too. And yet, here he was, facing one. There were 2 reasons he could be so brave. The first was thanks to his ogre companion skill. He could communicate with it and knew it was screaming, "Don't come near me! All of you set me free!" This ogre was terrified of being surrounded by mages and knights, even though it had done nothing wrong. The second reason, of course, was the quest. Objective 1, attack the enemy. Objective 2, defeat the enemy. The reward is 30 strength points and the spectator's eye skill. It was definitely a worthy reward. For someone like Louis, who has to repeat the same boring tasks every day, a single match that earns him points equal to 3 days' worth of work is a godsend. What was Louis waiting for? He lunged forward and punched it right in the face. Objective 1, attack the enemy first, completed. But it wasn't over yet. The goblin leaped up, trying to smash Louis's skull. As light as a feather, Louis dodged its devastating punch. He needed to find its weak spot and attack. Louis used time refraction to close the distance. He approached and aimed for the goblin's weak spot. The captain could only stand and watch in awe. What in the world is this guy? The goblin blocked Louis's punch. It swung its left arm, but Louis blocked that too. Louis attacked with his knee, but it was too weak. The goblin grabbed him and threw him away like a sandbag. Louis clung to the wall like a spider. Before he could even catch his breath, the goblin charged at him again with a heavy punch. Louis jumped, twisted his body, and unleashed a spinning kick he had practiced every single day. It immediately took effect, sending the goblin tumbling to the ground. Louis jumped on top of it. It was time for the grand finale. He used the skill Goblin's Fury. "Are you really human?" the goblin mumbled as Louis used a skill from its own tribe. "I don't think you need an answer to that, do you?" Louis replied, shocking it. But in any case, it's time to end this. Louis used explosive fire energy combined with the stacking effect of Goblin's Fury. He was gradually entering a berserk state, his power pouring out uncontrollably, forcing the Night Squad to retreat. A moment later, the goblin said nothing more. It seemed like everything was over. Trang, who was observing from the sidelines, was also surprised. Louis had exceeded its expectations. Did he really take down the goblin? "Heck yeah! Go wild, Louis!" The students erupted. After witnessing Louis's talent, Professor Eric gritted his teeth. "I can't believe he actually won!" The headmaster smiled with satisfaction. "That'll teach Eric to always find excuses to pick on Louis." The night squad surrounded and checked the goblin's condition, confirming it had been defeated. "Louis? Adele, who taught you those spells and combat skills?" the knight captain asked curiously. The fact that Louis was entirely self-taught left him in disbelief. Louis asked Professor Erdo about his test result. He was silent for a few seconds. Professor Erdo had thought Louis couldn't handle it, but he didn't even have a chance to stop him. "You always exceed my expectations, Louis. You passed." Louis smiled happily. This was the sentence he had been waiting so long to hear. Mission completed. Louis's reward also included the all-seeing eye, an active skill that allows Louis to see into people's hearts, collecting and digitizing all information. It unlocks the invisibility skill and the ability to see others who are invisible. Now you've become a genuine player. Trang knew this skill very well. It was something only players possessed. Louis could see enemies using the invisibility skill. They would have a faint outline around them. Next was the unlocking of the minimap. This function allows Louis to observe everything within a 500-meter radius of his position. Louis can also view a target's status window at will, however. The amount of information he can access depends on the target's level. Trang crossed her arms excitedly and said, "There are many more surprises." She told him to try using the all-seeing eye on the unconscious goblin. He just had to look at it and mentally say, "all-seeing eye." A status window immediately appeared. 3-star Bladewing Goblin, from the Stormfall Mountains. With blades growing from its shoulders, it's smaller and less aggressive than common goblins. Louis tried looking at Professor Erdo. He was a level 6 mage, but he couldn't read the rest of the information. Louis couldn't see the information of people whose levels were too far above his own. Once Louis gets stronger, the amount of information he can access will increase. So that's how it works. Louis smiled, satisfied after the practical exam ended. Rumors that Louis had defeated a goblin spread throughout the academy. "Luen, how does it feel to be the talk of the town? It's exciting, isn't it?" Jia-sun was curious about his feelings, but Louis himself didn't know what to say. "Excuse me, are you Senior Luen?" 3 unfamiliar girls shyly approached Louis and gave him some snacks. "Please have this when you get hungry." After Louis took them, the 3 girls shyly ran off. "Do you want this?" Louis coldly offered it to Jia-sun, which made him furious. "That's so disrespectful to the ladies who had to fight through their embarrassment just to give you lunch. Why are you getting so worked up about it?" Louis looked at Jia-sun's goofy face, but he could see his immense potential. Over the past few days, Louis had been checking everyone's status, and only Jia-sun's showed high potential. So Louis looked at him with a trusting gaze. "Jia-sun, just try a little harder. I bet you'll do great on the upcoming test." "What's this? Are you feeling sorry for me or something?" Jia-sun was confused. Louis told him to stop messing around and chasing girls. He should be more confident and hard-working. His skills were no joke. After a moment, Jia-sun wondered if this was really the same Louis he had known for the past 6 years. Even Louis himself found it hard to believe. But this is the person you've been wanting to show. Lately, there are even rumors about you, Louis, that you'll surpass Miko to become the valedictorian and the Academy's representative. I don't care about any of that. As Louis went inside, Jia-sun grew even more curious, because this year is the year of the Grand Festival. Every May, representatives from the famous academies gather for a magic festival that will be held, to select the most outstanding person. And every 8 years, all mages gather at the Olympiad to determine the strongest. The Grand Festival is held in a year when both of these events occur. It's a nationwide competition where the brightest students from each academy show off their abilities. The winner not only brings back a large sum of money for themselves and their academy, but they also receive countless privileges. That's why the number of participants for the Grand Festival is limited. 1 person for the solo competition and 30 for the team competition. The top 31 students from each academy will get to participate in this contest. This big competition, and the solo participant will be the academy's representative. I wonder who the representative will be this year. It's probably going to be Miko again. The students chattered during lunch. Jia-sun confidently asserted that his bedmate, Louis, would represent the academy in the competition because he was the only one who received 100 points from King Basi-agram. Besides, every time Miko participates in a magic tournament, the results are terrible. In team competitions, other people carry the team, but in the solo competition, he ranked 4th out of 5. That's why their academy is always called a bottom-tier academy. Now, everyone is placing their hopes on Louis to escape that title. The test isn't over yet. Lewis didn't allow himself to get arrogant or excited. The person chosen to participate will be the one who ranks first in the test and receives a recommendation from the professors. Besides, my one-on-one solo test with Miko is coming up soon. Right now, the only thing on his mind was how he was going to wipe the floor with Miko. 4 days later, Lewis had been training diligently and reached 1,000 strength points. Trang stretched, ready to fill its stomach. It had finally been waiting for this moment. The regular quest was upgraded to level 2. The quest's difficulty doubled, and its value tripled. After Trang ate its fill, its whole body erupted in a powerful flame, which astonished Lewis. Meanwhile, that guy Eric was fuming. He originally intended to give Lewis a hard time, but ended up helping him get more points. With Louis's current strength, he still thought Louis couldn't defeat Miko. But he was still worried about Miko's position as valedictorian and his participation in the Grand Festival, so he was racking his brain to come up with the dirtiest trick possible. Meanwhile, Trang opened its eyes, looking incredibly cool. It had reached level 2 and helped Lewis gain 200 strength points. Lewis felt that Trang looked a bit chubbier than before, and also stronger. Thanks to it, he had gained 200 points without having to do anything. Trang snorted arrogantly. Heh, this is just the beginning. The difficulty and rewards for the quests have increased. That reminds me. Lewis immediately checked. From 3,000 punches and kicks to 5,000, with an added 15-kilometer run each day and combat practice. Lewis had already increased his training intensity, so the other things weren't too difficult. He was only focused on the combat practice. It sounded new. Remember the first time we met? I told you I could turn into anything, Trang said majestically, because from now on, it could transform. But there are still limits. Only when I reach level 5 can I turn into a human. For now, I can only perform simple skills. Trang spun around and around, its soft brown bear fur changing into pieces of purple fabric. The most pathetic scarecrow in the world appeared, making Lewis unable to hold back his laughter. Don't you dare look down on this scarecrow. Trang warned Lewis beforehand because when Draca first started sparring, the scarecrow had helped him a lot. And so, every day, Louis had to practice combat with the scarecrow Trang. Besides being a target, it was also very useful. Trang was currently as strong as a 3rd-level mage. Once it regains its power, it can do anything. First, Louis wanted Trang to turn into a mage. It immediately gave a mischievous smile. Ho ho, okay, kiddo? Trang pulled a cute little staff out of nowhere to cast magic. Even if I hit you, it'll only shock you, not cause any damage. And if Lewis hits Trang, it won't be harmed at all. It was the perfect sparring partner. Take this. Trang didn't hesitate to attack Lewis. Lewis was incredibly excited. He thought Miko must be training right now too, so he couldn't afford to rest. Meanwhile, Miko was just kicking cans around. That bastard is such an eyesore. What do I do now? You brat! How dare you speak to me like that? If you were just a little bit stronger back then... Miko cut Eric off. He knew full well that it was thanks to Eric's schemes that Lewis's score had gone up. Thanks to you, he got a perfect score. If my family found out, I don't think you'd survive for long. Being taunted by Miko made Eric furious, but he couldn't do anything. Miko wasn't training. He just urged the man to think of a way to win against Lewis. Eric already had a plan. Take this. Eric handed Miko a tube of blaze flower. This is a flower that grows in the northern Illusion region. It's a rare herb that some people use to create special elixirs. If you drink it, you'll reach an awakened state. Your mana casting time will be shortened significantly, but it removes your sense of pain and makes you unable to distinguish between friend and foe. That's right. In other words, you won't be able to see anything at all. So you actually paid attention in class, huh? Miko didn't understand why the man wanted him to drink this. Are you crazy? You don't have the right to speak here. You already lost to that guy. Do you want to bring even more shame to our family? Eric's reasoning was extremely convincing, yet Miko was still intimidated by the professor. After all, that man knew exactly what he was capable of. Oh, my dear nephew, have you forgotten who I am? Eric's specialty was playing dirty. As the inspector for banned substances, he gave Miko a purple potion to erase any traces. Take the blaze flower, then drink this. That way no one can trace it. Don't be afraid. This is the only way for the Gary Hill family to get ahead. Are you going to take it or not? What a touching story. An uncle convincing his nephew to use drugs right before the final exam. At last, the one-on-one combat exam had arrived. The venue was the Mana Barrier Plaza. The testing area was always packed with people. Everyone wanted to stay and witness the final match, the most anticipated showdown between Lewis and Miko. Lewis stepped into the arena feeling a bit apprehensive, because Miko knew beforehand that Lewis was a mage specializing in close combat. If he had prepared countermeasures, it would be a truly difficult fight. But once Lewis got close to him, it would only take one punch to put him on the ground. To make the test as realistic as possible, the arena was prepared with a wide variety of terrain elements. Both sides were ready to compete, but Louis noticed something was off about Miko. His expression was like a wild dog waiting to be let off its leash. Normally, Miko would have been running his mouth with all sorts of taunts before a match, but today he was unusually silent. Lewis had to use his observer's eye to check. In addition to his normal stats, Miko also had a hidden berserk status. Miko must have done something to conceal it, but the students had already been physically inspected before the test began. Then, Lewis suddenly remembered that Professor Eric, Miko's uncle, was in charge of the inspection. It was highly likely that the Gary Hill uncle and nephew duo, Bao, had covered for each other to cheat. The only thing forbidden in the fight was dark magic. The 4 types of elemental magic could be used freely. Points would be awarded based on the tier of the magic used. In this arena, the power of magic was reduced by 99%, so there was no need to worry about your opponent. Lewis raised his hand with a question. What if one of us is discovered to have used a banned substance and gets caught? His question struck a nerve with Miko, making his heart skip a beat. According to the rules, anyone caught using a performance enhancer would be disqualified from the match and fail the test. They could also be expelled, depending on the severity. After they composed themselves, both took their fighting stances. For now, all Lewis could do was draw his own conclusions. Since he was the only one who could see the status window, no one would believe his word. Lewis needed to find convincing proof. Prepare, begin. As soon as the signal was given, both of them lunged forward to attack. Go to hell, Lewis! Miko used vines to wrap around Louis's leg. Ha! A second later, Lewis broke free with ease. Because the arena only dampened the power of mana, it had no effect on Lewis's physical strength. In other words, his strength was still ridiculously overpowered. You think that's all I've got? Miko used Fire Roar, sending a giant flame shooting toward Lewis. Lewis used a flash step to get behind a large rock, dodging just in time. After seeing those 2 spells, Lewis could tell that Miko's casting time had been reduced, while his mana output had increased, even with the arena's restrictions. Seeing Lewis hiding behind the rock, Miko put on an arrogant sneer. Don't just hide! Come out and face me, you coward! Based on Miko's more than usual state of excitement and his behavior so far, Lewis guessed he had used the awakening herb and the blaze flower. His hands were trembling with extreme excitement. It reduces the user's ability to feel pain and makes it difficult to distinguish between friend and foe. The only side effect that hadn't manifested yet was the full pain suppression. So that's why you're so confident. It's because of the blaze flower, isn't it? Being found out, Miko's face fell. You tried to cheat, but you couldn't hide it from my eyes. To take him down, Lewis didn't need to play dirty. Here I come, Miko. Louis used time refraction, shooting toward him like an arrow. Miko panicked and raised an ice barrier to stop him. It's useless. Lewis unleashed a sweeping kick, and Miko's ice barrier was instantly shattered. Whoa, what kind of magic was that? The spectators were all in awe of Lewis's performance. But it wasn't over yet. Miko used a 3rd-tier spell, Fire Tyrant, summoning a fire-breathing Tyrannosaurus in front of Louis. Lewis chose to face it head-on with his seismic punch. True to its name, its destructive power was like a real earthquake. Miko's little dinosaur was easily sent flying. The crowd was once again amazed as Lewis used earth magic to block fire. Miko was knocked to the ground. Lewis walked closer, causing Miko to panic. Ah, stay away from me! Don't be such a wimp. Take this. Lewis lightly flicked Miko on the forehead. Pop! The sound was so loud you could have heard it in the next country. It was just a small flick, but it packed the destructive power of a full-blown punch. A normal person would have been knocked unconscious from that blow, but Miko was still standing. He even let out a crazed laugh. Lewis, you dare to look down on me? Lewis didn't stop, continuing to lay a beating on Miko. He tumbled to the ground with the sound of cracking bones, but he still had the strength to laugh. Ha ha! That didn't hurt one bit. Even after taking so many consecutive hits, he was still conscious. Lewis realized he was at risk of dying from overdose shock. If this continues, it'll be dangerous. Wood prison. Lewis tightly bound Miko with tree roots, then raised his hand and declared, "Professor, Miko has used a banned substance." The supervising professor had to question Lewis, because if you're making a false accusation, you'll be disqualified. Lewis affirmed his claim with certainty. He knew the use of the substance had been concealed, or someone had discovered it and turned a blind eye. That person could only be someone with access to rare ingredients, and who was also responsible for the pre-match inspections. In the entire academy, there was only one such person, Professor Eric. The crowd started murmuring, since Eric was related to Miko. He immediately jumped down to confront Lewis. "Lewis, do you have any idea what you're saying? Are you accusing Miko of using a banned substance and me of turning a blind eye to it?" "Yes, sir. And I have a proof." Although he was a little intimidated, Eric called for another inspection. But Lewis knew full well that he had already used a special elixir to mask Miko's symptoms. "So, what is it you want now? Where is this so-called proof you mentioned?" Eric remained defiant. Lewis was about to show them right then and there. He stood before the large tree from the spell and lightly flicked his finger. The tree trunk immediately exploded and was incinerated in a flash. "That was the same forehead flick I used on him earlier." Lewis's statement sent a shiver down Eric's spine. This time they were in real trouble. One could argue that Miko's magic had simply improved through training, but there was no way he could take that many consecutive blows and still be conscious enough to laugh. Considering his current state, his skull must be rattling, and at least 4 of his ribs are broken, yet that Miko guy is still smiling as if he doesn't feel any pain at all. "Do you have anything else to deny, Professor Eric?" Of course, he couldn't argue because Lewis was absolutely right. The headmaster shot to his feet, clearly furious. "How dare you do such a thing? In a sacred place like this? Come with me to my office, immediately." The 4th exam also passed quickly. The depravity of the Gary Hill family line was exposed. Professor Eric went back to his hometown to raise fish, and Miko was expelled. From then on, the school started calling Lewis the Saint of Expulsion, instead of Louis the Dullard like before. More importantly, Lewis was summoned by the headmaster and now stood before the door to his office. It was a magical gateway. When Lewis stepped through, he saw a familiar scene, the Adele family domain. But he quickly realized this wasn't reality. There was even a chair called the Terran Throne, the seat of the Supreme Mage. Just then, Headmaster Luen appeared behind him. "This place was created by the eyes of Malorox, the leader who started the war of invasion on the continent. Frelia. Legend has it that he had the ability to make a person see what they desired most. After Malorox's body was refined into a treasure, the eyes of Malorox became that very treasure, helping people see what they desire. What just appeared before your eyes, Lewis, was what you yearn for the most. That's right. What Lewis always desired was to restore the Adele family domain and become the most powerful mage. As for the headmaster, he saw a world where everyone acted according to their roles, a world where students are students, and mages are mages. The headmaster knew it was not something easily achieved, but it was what he had always wished for nonetheless. Before stepping through another door, Lewis looked back at the treasure. A scene of everyone cheering for him as he became the valedictorian appeared. That, too, was a long-held dream of his. After passing through the treasure's space, the two of them arrived at the headmaster's main office. Today, the headmaster had called Lewis to ask him something. "Among the countless forbidden substances, how did you know that what Miko used was burning flour?" Lewis answered honestly. First, Miko's attitude was not his usual self. He was violent, but there was also a restlessness to him. The amplification and flow of his mana were also abnormal, so I guessed he had used burning flour. But from what I saw, you seemed certain. It was no longer a guess. Why is that? The headmaster was curious. Because the mana barrier in the hall only reduces magical power, it doesn't affect physical strength. And what I used was physical strength, not magic. He tried to avoid mentioning his clairvoyant eye as much as possible. I was certain Miko had gone into severe shock. And yet he was still able to laugh and showed no signs of pain. That could only prove he had used burning flour. Hearing Louis's flawless answer, the headmaster was extremely pleased. Even though he's only 16 years old, he was sharp enough to immediately detect even the smallest changes in his opponent, especially under those circumstances. He also handled it with great composure. Plus, his magic skills are top-notch. As the headmaster of this academy, I am very sorry about this incident. I sincerely apologize, Lewis. I promise I will not let the Gary Hill family harm you. In addition, the headmaster had another proposal, to nominate Lewis to participate in the Grand Festival this July. As the Academy's representative, Lewis was utterly stunned. It was a position everyone coveted. In truth, when he first came here, he had already vaguely guessed this might happen. However, Louis didn't dare to accept. He felt he didn't have enough experience. He hadn't even been in a real battle during his past 5 years at the Academy. He hadn't achieved anything noteworthy either. While the Grand Festival was a gathering of all the most talented people, Lewis didn't know if he was strong enough to compete. That's not a problem. The headmaster is a judge at the Grand Festival, and he believes Lewis is worthy of being called a championship contender. The headmaster affirmed that Lewis is a very promising candidate. The frightening thing is, Lewis is a secret weapon that no one expects. To everyone else, you're a mystery. There's no information about you. They don't know what techniques or fighting style you use. Therefore, they can't figure out a way to counter you. Because you were always in last place, they won't be on guard. It might sound a little disheartening, but this is your strength. This time, you'll deliver a blow that no one will see coming. What do you say? Should I join or not? At this point, Lewis could no longer contain his excitement. He would definitely do his best not to let everyone down. It seemed everything was going according to the headmaster's plan. So, he had invited a professor to help Lewis develop his physical skills instead of his magic. You still doing okay, kid? At a loss, Lewis stared in surprise at the person in front of him. This was Guter Perante, captain of the Foreign Knight Order, and one of only 5 Grade 5 knights in the Kingdom of Zedion. This was also the man who had tried his best to stop him during the 3rd exam. He never expected to be taking a physical skills class with him. First, Guter wanted to confirm a few things. According to the information from Professor Hado, Lewis is a special mage because you can only fight in close combat? Lewis nodded in confirmation. From what he had observed, Louis's movements were quite good, fast, efficient, and without a single wasted motion. But, to be honest, one look is all it takes to know you've never studied martial arts. Your moves might have worked on that goblin before, but against the Knight Order you would be read completely. No matter how strong you are, opponents with good physical skills can predict your attacks through the movement of your shoulders and hips. Everything the professor said was true. Because all of Louis's moves were just repetitive motions from his quests, he couldn't apply much during a real fight. But don't worry, if you learn from me, your movements will change from the most basic level. Professor Guter didn't want to waste time, so the two of them would start right away. The first lesson was how to step correctly. With a solid stance, the force of your sword swing becomes stronger. Furthermore, your feet can help predict the enemy's next move. Only when you learn how to step correctly can you truly use physical skills. And so, Lewis practiced stepping like the heroes of old. Next came celestial martial arts, a discipline often used in training knights. This discipline consists of 36 stances, not to mention swordsmanship techniques. Following Professor Guter's guidance, Lewis trained diligently to improve his movement skills. The professor was very pleased with his progress and hard work. He remembered that when they started, Lewis had asked why he was teaching him martial arts. Guter had to come to the academy every day, and now he had to teach Lewis on top of that. Just think of this as a type of investment. That was the professor's reason. He had met someone with the potential to become a talented mage in the future if he helped support them. He considered it a worthy investment. After hearing this, Lewis decided to entrust his body to him. I'm counting on you, Professor Guter. But calling you Professor sounds so stiff. Just call me Big Bro, I'm only in my 30s. Professor Guter chuckled. The more he watched Lewis fight, the more impressed he became, especially with the boy's courage. When he inspected the goblin that Lewis had defeated before, its jaw had been broken. A close combat mage who's even stronger than a goblin. No wonder he found the kid so interesting. Just like that, 3 weeks passed, and Lewis's body arts skill reached level 10. He received a reward that increased his mage-type skills, allowing him to channel magic throughout his body. It seems mastering Tenbu is quite useful. Trang also leveled up to level 3, thanks to leeching off Louis. With over 2,000 strength points in his grasp, Lewis already felt it was an immense amount. But Trang found the speed at which Lewis gained strength even more incredible. Even Draka took over a year after meeting her to reach that many points. Lewis! Jason came running up, panting. Did you see? Lewis had been so focused on his martial arts and physical training that he hadn't paid attention to what was happening outside. They've already posted the list of participants for the Grand Festival at the Academy Gate. At the opening ceremony, Lewis represented the new students on the podium and, just like that, became the target of envy and suspicion. In response to this jealousy, Lewis had acted pathetically for the past 6 years. All he could do was watch from a distance as Miko received everyone's congratulations. But now things were different. Lewis felt goosebumps all over when he saw his name as the Academy's representative. "Hey, it's Lewis! Congratulations on becoming the representative!" It had been a long time since Lewis had been able to enjoy congratulations like these. Finally, Lewis had become the Academy's representative once again. And Jason was there too, even if only in 31st place. When he was informed that Lewis had mastered Tenbu, Professor Haido was extremely surprised, even a little scared, that he was a level 5 student at the age of 16. He had faith that Louis could do it. Preparations for the Grand Festival went smoothly, and the day of departure for Antan arrived. Some students were riding a mana train for the first time, so they were very excited. There are only 2 transit points in the Duyan Kingdom, but in the ruined Duyan Imperial Federation, there are over 100. Tisk, look at these country bumpkins, making a huge fuss over a single mana train ride. That bastard is Henker, Miko's lackey, who participated in last year's Magic Festival with him. If you think Lewis is going to perform some kind of miracle at the Grand Festival, you'd better give up. He's just arrogant because he got a high score on the entrance exam. Furthermore, the representatives from other academies are like phantoms. They believe they'd have a higher chance of winning with someone experienced like Miko. They don't accept Louis as the Academy's representative. This made Jason tremble with anger. There were so many bastards who wanted to benefit even just a little by clinging to the Gary Hill family. But he was determined to do well in this competition, even if it meant being on the same team as those guys. Miko must be so pleased. The dogs remain loyal to their master, even after their master has been kicked out. Henker stupidly asked if Lewis was referring to them. Unfortunately for them, they understood, so Lewis didn't need to elaborate. Listen up. Lewis had to set him straight. The Grand Festival is on a whole other level compared to the Magic Festivals you've attended. If you get good results, you'll definitely get better opportunities than the ones the Gary Hill family can offer. Of course, if we get good results, that's how it'll be. But is that even possible? Even Henker felt intimidated. All the other participants are monsters, while their fate is to be stuck in the Duyan Kingdom, working under the Gary Hill family. We can do it, Louis declared. Because in the Grand Festival, unity is the most important thing. It's best if we eliminate any elements that hinder morale and teamwork. So, does that mean you'll be competing without us? Think it over on the way there. Consider who your representative is now, and more importantly, the Gary Hill family isn't here to witness your loyalty. Pissed off that he'd lost the war of words with Lewis, Henker yelled, "You're ruining your own first individual match! I won't listen to a single order from you during the Grand Festival!" On the mana train, the most excited person was none other than Trang. She talked non-stop about the past, back when there were no mana trains, making Lewis's ears ache. Suddenly, the cabin door opened. I think I smell the stench of losers somewhere around here. Let's see. The country bumpkins from the Idiot Academy. 3 students from the Oyota National Magic Academy burst in. It's the only training school in Oyota, a sand kingdom built upon the desert, famous for its ancient history and for honing swordsmanship and the body to their absolute limits. Louis wondered what the Oyota guys were doing in their train car. "Hey, you idiots from the academy, where's Miko Garyhill?" Don't tell me he ran off because of some hardship, did he? "I was planning on having him take care of us this year, like a slave. Ha ha!" He went around greeting familiar faces from the Magic Festival. From last year, a classic bully. Trang chuckled, amused whenever Lewis ran into trouble. "Oh my, look how patient you are. To just sit there and listen to all that." Until now, Lewis never knew about this, because he never had the chance to go. But it seemed their academy wasn't treated very well. Professor Haido calmly continued reading his book, showing no intention of intervening. Right now, his position was simply that of a guide. In other words, the authority and responsibility for the entire team are now in the hands of this representative. "Lewis, where's your representative, Miko Garyhill?" He went over to Hank to greet him. Miko's probably lying in bed right now, praying for his broken ribs to heal. Louis spoke up, silencing the entire cabin. "Hank said that you are their representative this time." The student from Oyota, meeting Lewis for the first time, approached him and introduced himself. "I am Oyota's representative, Seta Mankiri." Louis also introduced himself. More importantly, that's enough with the greetings. If he's done causing trouble, then he should get his ass out of our cabin. Of course, you'll apologize for calling us a stupid academy before you leave, won't you? With a polite attitude. What did you say? Seta didn't expect to be shut down so coldly by Lewis, leaving him utterly humiliated. "Hey, Hank, didn't you tell him who I am?" Seeing Hank remain silent, he was about to teach Lewis a lesson. Lewis understood the situation. This was why the participants from last year's Grand Festival were so scared when they saw the students from Oyota Academy. It was because they were bullied by Seta Mankiri. They do this deliberately to demoralize everyone before the match. Turns out the Grand Festival had already begun. "So you want to go?" Lewis wasn't afraid to clash with him right then and there. Naturally, that Seta guy didn't hesitate and was about to charge in and get physical with Lewis. "Seta, stop!" Oyota's instructor rushed in and scolded Seta in front of them. He then turned to apologize to Professor Hido and everyone on his behalf before pushing Seta back to their cabin, before he could cause another scene. In the Oyota cabin, Seta didn't understand why the professor had stopped him, especially when he was the one who devised this plan. "Didn't you see? He saw Professor Hido give a faint smile while watching you, as if he were waiting for you to make a move." "He's just confident, sir." The professor wasn't so sure. He suspected there was more to Lewis than they knew, but he was certainly nothing like Miko Gary Hill. Previously, after the Oyota crowd had left, the atmosphere in the Zenit cabin changed rapidly. Just a moment ago, they were full of ego and rivalry, but now they were more united. "Are you okay, Lewis? Why did you have to be so intense?" "Those kids have known how to fight since the day they were born." The other students were worried, as Lewis had been ready to fight Seta. Lewis wondered if they weren't bothered by their academy being so blatantly disrespected. As the representative, if I just sat back quietly, they would have loved it and looked down on us even more. If I did nothing, we really would be the stupid academy they called us. If that's the case, do you all still want to be disrespected like that? It's precisely because you always back down that they've looked down on us for the past 5 years. Now is not the time to let our egos divide us and allow them to openly disrespect us. The first match doesn't involve representatives. They nominated Hanker as the goalkeeper for the launch ball match, which made him act all bashful. Looks like Miko's little shadow is finally participating. Lewis hoped everything would continue to go this smoothly, until the competition is over. At last, they all arrived in Antendachi, a state belonging to the Renak Royal Federation, and the only state recognized as neutral territory by the Empire. Therefore, upon setting foot here, even thousand-year enemies must set aside their hatred. If any blood is shed within Anten's territory, the Renak Empire will step in to handle the matter as the hegemon of the 6 territories. That's why. Anten is the venue for large-scale international competitions like the Grand Festival and the Grand Sword Tournament. Jason entered and was in awe. This place looks like a different world. The Diamond District where we live is already impressive, but this is on another level. Lewis was also overwhelmed by Anten, the kingdom's capital. Everything exuded an ancient air. Everyone else, however, seemed at ease. It was only after arriving here that he realized how truly small their hometown was. All the academies participating in the Grand Festival had horse-drawn carriages waiting to take them to their hotels. Lewis rode in the same carriage as Professor Hido. The professor gave a warning just in case students from other academies were nearby. Causing trouble at this point is useless. The professor said this while looking directly at Lewis, making him feel a little guilty. "Oh, look there." Trang was intrigued, having sniffed out a familiar scent. "It seems a relic of Draka is here." The next day, Lewis woke up early, dressed neatly, and went out while Jason was still half asleep. "Huh? Lewis, you going on a date?" Louis opened his minimap and followed the trace Trang had sensed. Even Trang itself found it strange. The two of them stopped at a workshop called Vibrating Memories. Lewis gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. He had thought a Black Dragon's item would be in a special place, not somewhere with such a cheesy name. At the very least, it should be in a place like a black market or the basement of some rich person's mansion. This was all because Draka's relics have no effect on ordinary mages. Lewis used the immunity ring to pinpoint the exact location of the player intrinsic treasure. This is a treasure, but also Draka's first failure. It possesses an immunity ability that helps resist physical impacts and increases the chance of nullifying physical damage. It sounds cool, but why is it called Draka's failure? Trang laughed. Because it doesn't just resist attacks, it also resists normal physical contact. You can't even get a hug from your lover. It's there when you don't need it and gone when you do. That's why it's called a failure. However, Lewis still needed it. Putting it on would boost his strength by 200 points, so he was already dying to wear it. The ring fit perfectly, as if it were made just for him. Lewis asked the shopkeeper for the price, but the man just gave it to him. It had been there for so long without anyone noticing that he was about to throw it away. Luen wandered around to see if there was anything else to buy. He had the appraiser's eye, so he could determine an item's value and avoid getting ripped off. A high-rarity item caught Lewen's attention. The book was Quantum Mechanics of Magic and Swordsmanship. Just as Lewis placed his hand on it, another girl rushed over for the same book. This was Irene Prius, a highly promising level 5 mage. She was from Seki Women's University. Taran Atemis, the king of mages and the supreme mage, had personally chosen Irene as one of his 11 successors. The rumor was that she was a genius about to reach level 5, but it seems the rumors underestimated her. Her status window showed she was already a level 5 mage. "Let go," Irene said coldly. But Lewis had gotten there first. "You already found what you needed. Now you're just looking for something else, right? But I came here just to buy this book. If it's not a big deal, could you let me have it?" It seemed Irene had overheard Lewis's conversation. He was curious what she needed this book for, since people rarely bought this kind of thing. It's just for an assignment. I can't really explain." Looking at Irene's expression, Lewis sighed. She'd probably never told a lie in her life. "Then you take it." After all, Luen didn't really need the book. He went to look at other items. Irene was surprised by Lewen's attitude. She thought they were going to have a showdown over the book. Seeing this, her maidenly heart was stirred. Back at the X-Knight Academy dorms, Jason and Hanker were interrogating Lewis. Where did he meet Irene Prius? When? What did they talk about? Was she as beautiful as the rumors said? And so on and so forth. Jason was kicking himself for not going with Lewis. His dream was to touch Irene's hand just once. How pathetic. I met Irene at the Grand Festival, you know. I even got to sit next to her, Hanker boasted. Oh, come on! That doesn't even count as talking. What are you talking about? Look at you, you've never even seen her up close. Lewis could only sigh at these two girl-crazy idiots. Hank also brought up another story, though. As strong as Irene is, she's only number 2. Every year she loses to the top-ranked guy, Doom Pram, and it stresses her out. Doom Pram is number 1 at the Zenith Military Training School. He's even recognized as the strongest among people his age on this continent. Not to mention Doom Pram possesses the light sword. Hearing this, Lewis understood why Irene needed that book. She must be looking for a way to defeat Doom Pram, but being a swordsman isn't all it's cracked up to be. Compared to other weapons, a magic sword doesn't provide much more power. Moreover, mastering swordsmanship is no easy feat. However, Doom Pram has the light sword, an S-rank treasure. His skill level is on par with a regular knight, and on top of that, he's rich, influential, and ridiculously handsome. All the girls fall head over heels for him. Does a person like that really exist? After listening for a while, Jason just felt sleepy. Lewis, however, was silent and deep in thought. One was a level 5 mage at just 16 years old. The other was a swordsman who was always at the top of the ranks. He worried if he could possibly win against geniuses like them. No one was paying any attention to Lewis for sure, but the principal's words of encouragement echoed in his mind, making him want to test his limits. Hey, the opening ceremony lineups are out. Hearing this news, Lewis regained his spirits. The Grand Festival had only just begun. Just wait. He was going to tear this place up. Finally, the debut lineup was announced. Lewis waited to see their group stage opponents. Damn it. Our first match is against those idiots from that idiot academy. This is going to be too easy. You guys can just relax. Seda was already running his mouth, mocking them. Luen also felt weary, knowing their first opponent was Oyota Academy, because they were notorious for playing dirty. Moreover, many students at X-Knight Academy were psychologically scarred by them. You guys are so weak it's not even fun. Boring as hell. They publicly insulted Lewen's academy, thinking they couldn't do a damn thing. Luen was satisfied with this attitude. He would take this opportunity to show them that X-Knight Academy wasn't the same as it used to be. I've been waiting for you too. Wow, there are a lot of Grand Festival participants here. Seeing Luen speak up, the guy named Seda started to take notice. Luen spoke loudly to everyone present. I'm Luen Adele, the representative from that idiot academy you're all talking about. I don't have much to say, just one small request. Never call us the Idiot Academy again. It's really unpleasant to hear. Luen's public rebuttal left the Oyota crowd unsure how to react. Luen was tired of always being at the bottom. From now on, he wanted to be the one at the very top. If we don't call you the Idiot Academy, what should we call you? Stop talking nonsense and acting all high and mighty. As expected, X-Knight Academy's 5-year reputation for being last couldn't be erased with just a few words from Lewis. Many people wondered who he was to dare claim he would be number 1. Lewis smirked. You could say he was the trump card for X-Knight Academy, and for himself. From now on, he would never back down again. As expected, his words had some effect on Oyota Academy. They started looking into him. The only information they could find was that Luen had a history of being at the bottom of his class for 6 straight years, yet he was chosen as the Academy's representative. Rumor had it that at the beginning of the last term, his scores did a complete 180. Perhaps that achievement was the source of Lewis's confidence. Seta recalled what his supervising professor told him about Lewis. He's definitely different in some way. After thinking for a moment, Seta laughed. I'm probably just overthinking things. He stood up and stretched. It was time to teach X-Knight Academy a lesson, the Oyota way. At the XNID dorms, everyone is discussing tomorrow's match, a team-based mana grenade competition. Since there are no individual Academy representatives, the challenge requires the team to throw mana grenades at a mithril golem. The first team to take it down wins. Without you tomorrow, I don't know if we'll be okay. The XNID students were worried since their ace, Lewis, wasn't playing. Although their individual skills couldn't match Oyota's, Lewis had a plan, since this was a team match. So if everyone works together, our chances of winning will be much higher. First, we'll split the entire team into groups. Group 1 will heat up the grenades. Group 2 will be responsible for transporting them to Group 3. Who will be the ones attacking the golem? The final group will hinder the opponent by healing their golem. The whole team was still bewildered after hearing this strategy. It would take way too long to take down Oyota's golem. They attack with 30 people at once. If we have fewer people on offense, our damage output will also decrease. What's wrong with you guys? Lewis asked them. He had already told them that they would come out on top, and those words came from the bottom of his heart. Whether he participated or not, Lewis would help them with all his might. For every one of Oyota's attacks, we'll land 2 or 3. The members of Oyota are all exceptionally skilled, which is why they can get away with using traditional methods. But if we do it that way, we'll just be wasting time. Jason decided to put his faith in Lewis's strategy, for now he was their commander. The rest of them also resolved to give it a try. Satisfied, Lewis made it final. Jason would be the commander. He divided the teams based on each person's abilities. Thanks to his spectator's eye, Lewis could see everyone's skills, minimizing disadvantages and focusing more on each person's strengths. Once placed in the right group, everyone gradually grew more confident. The good heaters heated and the good throwers threw. Seeing everyone's spirits lift made Lewis even more satisfied. Their trust had been solidified. Just then, a guy burst through the door, his face swollen and bruised from his injuries. The Oyota guys. They called their buddies and ganged up on me. Hearing this, Lewis froze. This time, those Oyota punks had really crossed the line. In a room at Oyota Academy, that Seta guy was sitting arrogantly with his cronies. Oh, look who it is. What are you planning to do, huh? Lewis walked in and beckoned to Seta, as if calling a dog. Seta Mankiri, get over here now. Damn it, is this guy nuts? Seta gritted his teeth and stood up to face Lewis. He couldn't understand how this guy could always act so smug. It really pissed him off. What gives you the right, huh? Lewis placed a hand on his shoulder and pressed down lightly, forcing Seta to his knees. It felt as if an entire house had just collapsed on top of him. You bastard! He furiously swung a fist at Lewis. Lewis shifted slightly, easily dodging to the side. He grabbed Seta's arm by the elbow and twisted it behind his back, making Seta let out a pained grunt in an ice-cold voice. Ilui warned them, if you ever dare touch one of my people again, this won't be the end of it. The Oyota Academy students surrounded Seta, who was now curled up on the ground. What happened? Are you okay? Seta looked up spitefully at Lewis, who stood there arrogantly with his hands in his pockets. Want to make a bet with me? Lewis returned and told his friends what happened, getting them all excited. So if we win against Oyota Academy, you get to flick Seta on the forehead? Don't tell me it's a forehead flick like Miko's. Not only that, Seda will also have to apologize to us in front of everyone. This gave them even more motivation to win. They absolutely had to pay them back for the humiliation of the past 5 years. Soon, it was time to head to the arena for the opening ceremony. Historically, the mages who participated in the Grand Festival have all become key figures in changing the fate of the entire continent. Lewis felt incredibly proud to have the chance to stand here himself, the very place where legends of history are made. The opening ceremony had concluded. All students, please return to your seats. As Lewis was heading out, he ran into Seda. He was still bitter about yesterday. Get ready. I won't be careless this time. Lewis sighed wearily. The opponent he was aiming for right now wasn't a blockhead like Seda, but Pram. He was the winner of the Magic Festival, and also the best student from the Zenith Military Training Academy. If he made it to the later rounds, he would definitely have to face him. You must be the one who specializes in stirring up trouble, aren't you? Irene Brios had suddenly come up to talk to him, surprising Lewis. Irene had heard about how Lewis went around causing a commotion yesterday, even going to Oyota Academy to stir things up. How did you know? This place is small. I'm sure everyone here already knows. Lewis hadn't expected his little chat with Seda to spread so quickly. Because Lewis had given the book to Irene last time, she decided to give him a piece of advice. It's best not to stand out too much. Like you, right? Like, you're hiding your own talents too, aren't you? Lewis's words hit a nerve, startling her. Lewis didn't want to say anything more about Irene's abilities, so he just said goodbye. Girls are temporary. The competition is eternal. In just a few minutes, the first monogrenade match between XNID Academy and Oyota would begin. In the staging hall, Jason was rallying everyone's spirits. Let's show them our strength! Show them we're not the idiot academy anymore! When the match began, everyone was completely bewildered, because until now, victory in team competitions had always relied on individual skill. Arranging a formation like a group of knights was a strange concept to everyone. Even so, the majority still believed Oyota Academy would win. They're the ones who always act like they own the place. Heh, Idiot Academy lives up to its name. No wonder they're dead last. Aaron, watching the match, was completely astonished by what was happening. Team XNIT's golem had lost an arm. Jason was leading the grenade squad. From the sidelines, Luen tried to direct the Hanker groups. All right, they're all warmed up. Mora and Ayake, you two assist with transport. Go. After a while, the XNIT golem's right arm was also destroyed. Seda, watching, was boiling with rage. How could these idiots be losing to the stupid academy? These guys are real bastards. They keep healing the golem, so it's not getting any weaker. The more Oyota's team attacked, the stronger the golem got. They were just exhausting themselves. Aaron was secretly impressed with Ignis's strategy. They were overcoming Oyota's advantage in individual power, thanks to their tactics. But for this strategy to be effective, one must grasp the abilities of each person. Like when Lewis found the book Irene needed in just a few seconds. That had caught her attention. Now, he was even able to group the members based on their individual strengths. Just who was this Lewis? She'd never seen him in any of the previous magic festivals. This is the final move. Jason, grenade in hand, threw it towards the golem. It shattered into 100 pieces. And it wasn't just the golem that broke. Seda's heart shattered right along with it. He could only let out a cold snort. Now where am I supposed to find a hole to crawl into? Woohoo, we did it! In the event that everyone thought Oyota Academy would win, victory instead went to the academy they called stupid. Everyone rushed towards Lewis. They threw their arms around his shoulders and neck. Even without participating directly, Lewis had carried the team on his back. So Oyota is at the bottom of the rankings, are they? If that's the case, should we call them Oyota the Flunkers? Ouch, that's gotta sting. The whispers from the stands aimed at Oyota Academy made them not know where to hide. Next up was the Capture the Flag event between the Academy representatives. The first match was between Louis and Seda. As soon as he stepped onto the field, Seda mocked him. Why do you look so tense, Luen? Currently, XNIT Academy was ranked in the top 20 out of 32. Luen thought that was just about right. After the first match, people were starting to pay attention to them, but it still wasn't enough to shed the label they've had for all these years. That's why this time, Louis decided he would win spectacularly. No more holding back. Only then would people see them in a different light. Not only that, they also had to prove themselves to the Archmage, who was watching from above. In the chamber of the 6 great mages, They were observing the match through an orb. King Taron recognized Luen because he was once a candidate among the 11 normal children. He had a habit of remembering talented individuals, and Lewis was a natural-born genius, capable of teaching himself how to use mana at a young age. That's why I was so disappointed when I learned he had mana disorder. Disappointed? The headmaster spoke up. More like you treated Louis as if he were completely talentless and useless. Exposed, Taron could only give a strained laugh. But I never expected you, headmaster, to choose a student like that as your academy's representative. I don't suppose you did it because you're planning something interesting. Like you did before? That boy broke his curse after just a few years. The headmaster was extremely confident in Lewis. If you want to know his power, just watch and you'll see. Now what are you planning to do? Seda thought. Binding? Freezing? You'd have to get close to do either. Or are you going to summon a guardian? Seda asked curiously. But Lewis thought summoning a guardian wasn't very smart. I'll just do what I always do, he thought. Charge in and start swinging. The match began. Lewis charged towards Seda, who was casting a summoning spell. You'll pay for what you did to me the other day. Summon Guardian. The Guardian was a giant knight in armor, wielding a weapon. Luen used time refraction to dodge the Guardian, then circled behind Seda, leaving him defenseless. Seda swung a punch at Luen, and this time Luen caught it. Knew it! Seda's arm, caught in a tight grip, began to tremble. Are you going to let go? But this probably wasn't the best time for him to be saying that. The Guardian was charging towards Lewis to attack, but Seda was standing right in front of him. His face went pale. Stop, you stupid Guardian! In this life-or-death moment, Lewis held on tight, making it impossible for Seda to escape. Lewis looked at him provocatively. Go on, try and run. In that moment, Seda realized something. The feeling of being overpowered by Lewis was real. It wasn't just because he'd let his guard down. Just then the Guardian charged. Seda shut his eyes, bracing for the pain and humiliation of defeat. But when he felt nothing, he slowly opened his eyes to see what was happening. Lewis was fighting the Steel Guardian with his bare fists. Every single punch was creating cracks in its armor. Seda couldn't believe it. After taking a relentless beating, the Guardian returned to dust. Luen walked towards Seda, who flinched and stumbled backward. Did you just save me? Save you? Luen couldn't believe he was stupid enough to think he would save the person who had humiliated his friends. The reason Lewis intervened was because he wanted to finish Seda with his own hands. Remember our bet? It's just a little forehead flick. An irresistibly crisp thwack echoed out. Seda's entire body flew backward from Lewis's flick. The only thought in his head was, the sky looks so blue today. Holy crap! The crowd winced, feeling the pain in Seda's stead. The students of XNYT Academy exploded with emotion. Victory had never felt so satisfying. Having both won the match and gotten his 5-year revenge, Lewis had attracted everyone's attention, including that of the underworld king, Taron. The headmaster sitting beside him sighed and thought to himself, here we go again. Taron was trying to suppress his anger. He, a demigod, the only mage to reach level 8 and known as the Supreme Mage, had never seen magic like the kind Louis used. Just who are you to make my heart stir like this? Tyron Ignis, tell me everything you know about Louis Adele. Faced with Taron's command, the headmaster chose his words carefully. Lewis is a student who always does his duty. He's someone everyone thought would give up, but in the end, never did. Someone who turned his weaknesses into strengths and is more of a true mage than anyone else. That is what I know about Louis Adele. The headmaster's answer irritated the underworld king, but there was nothing he could do. Ha! Are you trying to protect your student from my curiosity, Tyron? What if I just summon Lewis here and ask him directly? Faced with Taron's coercion, the headmaster couldn't just sit back. If you intend to force the boy to talk, then I'm afraid I'll have to stop you. Taron gave a wry smile. The headmaster was using a mage's right to secrecy, the Millie Oath, so he wouldn't be allowed to question Lewis and could only sit there eating cake. They drank tea and chatted for a bit. The underworld king, Taron, was obsessed with reaching the limits of magic. He was determined to find out what kind of magic Lewis was using, so he could obtain it for himself. That night, at the drink-or-die bar, Lewis held his head in his hands, exasperated. We've only won 1 round. We should be focusing on resting right now. The other schools are partying too, so why stress? Let's get wild. Lewis's words fell on deaf ears. Jason chimed in, trying to pull Lewis along. Come on, let's celebrate the victory. It's a grand festival, after all. They have vanilla antenna coconut juice and even dragon kiss. Lewis had no idea what the heck a dragon kiss was, so Jason started his sales pitch. You know I've always been a patriot, right? Turns out it's a specialty from Jason's hometown. But that's not why he ordered this bottle. Just one sip and you'll feel like you're French kissing a dragon. Come on, Lewis, don't make that face. Just give it a try. Just one glass will take you to heaven. Just one glass to taste perfection. A large figure suddenly appeared behind them. It was Seta Mankiri. His appearance shattered the atmosphere. Jason immediately stood up and tried to shoo him away like an evil spirit. His sudden appearance ruined all the fun. Lewis was also on guard, wondering why he was here. Are you here to start something? I came to apologize. Seta struggled to get the words out. Both Lewis and Jason froze solid, witnessing a scene they had never seen before. I'm sorry for looking down on you all this time. After being defeated by Louis in the arena, he realized he shouldn't look down on others just because they're weaker than him. There are many people in the world stronger than Seta, so to someone else, he could also be the weak one. Seta truly felt that what he had done all this time was wrong. Wait, what's with the sudden change? Jason couldn't believe his ears. Seta also knew that if he said this, it wouldn't be easy to be forgiven. So he bowed before all of them to express his apology. Man, this is awkward. Everyone was unsure how to react to Seta's actions. He also apologized for ruining the atmosphere and decided to leave immediately. Seta, are you apologizing because of the bet, or are you genuinely sorry? Lewis asked him directly. Seta put on a repentant puppy dog face, assuring him that everything he said was the truth. Lewis let out a sigh of relief, walked over, and held out his hand to him. Thanks for the manly apology. Seta was a bit surprised, but he also reached out his hand to make peace. Everyone else accepted Seta's apology, and so they all gathered together, arms around each other's necks, chugging bottles of Dragon Kiss. Suddenly, Louis's eyes snapped open. Jason and the others looked at him and burst out laughing. You're awake, are you? Do you remember what happened yesterday? You must really like Dragon Kiss, huh? Hank's comment made Jason and the others laugh until their stomachs hurt. Yesterday, Lewis was crying and saying, "Thank you guys for believing in me. School life is so hard." I never expected the perfect Lewis to have a side like this. From now on, Jason and the others had something to tease Lewis about. He walked down the hallway muttering, "Those little devils. I just woke up and they're already starting trouble. What kind of drink is Dragon Kiss to make someone so emotional? From now on, I'm staying 100 meters away from it." Lewis, did you sleep well last night? This time it was running into Seta, which made Lewis even more flustered. Last night, the two of them had apologized to each other and promised to be sworn brothers from now on. Lewis turned red and ran off. Meanwhile, Seta stood in the middle of the hallway and shouted, "My friend, see you later!" Out of the frying pan and into the fire. Lewis ran right into the two-headed professor. Wherever you go, trouble seems to follow. The professor's words made Lewis flinch, but the professor wasn't referring to that. Instead, he was announcing that someone wanted to see him. The headmaster is worried because this person is dangerous, despite their kind appearance. This description made Lewis even more curious. It turned out the person who wanted to see him now was none other than the master of hypocrisy, Underworld King Tehran. The two-headed professor had to remind him to be careful, because people like him who hide their true nature are more dangerous than high-level wanted criminals. Louis promised to keep that in mind after the examination period ended. The professor would inform him of the time and place later. After hearing Louis's story, the other students were incredibly excited. The Supreme Mage, Underworld King Tehran, is watching us? And so they had another reason to win. Lewis had already thought of a strategy. It's called Defend If You Can. The next match is Arrow Ball, a game that uses magically guided arrows. They fly around constantly. Each team has 9 members, split into offense, defense, and goalie positions. The team that gets more arrows into the opponent's goal, it wins. The rules are simple, but the game is highly tactical. You have to know when to use defensive spells, when to cast restraining spells, and how to catch the arrow ball, and throw it into the opposing goal. Normally, you'd have to consider a lot, but with Lewis here, the rule book is just a suggestion. He shot like an arrow toward the enemy goal. They threw every kind of magic they had to stop Lewis, but it was all useless. In the stands, Seta was cheering for Lewis even louder than the students from X-Nit Academy. Everyone stared at him judgmentally. What's wrong with that guy? He was throwing a huge tantrum after losing yesterday. Lewis must have beaten him so badly he lost his mind. What did you just say? Don't you know? You trade blows first, then you become brothers. Yeah, but Lewis was the only one doing the punching. No one dared to say it to Seta's face anymore, whispering behind his back instead. Seta wasn't just pretending to be friendly with Lewis. After their duel, he was convinced Lewis would be the sorcerer of the next generation. Aaron from Secadelian Women's University, Malkin from the Frelia School of Sacred Arts, Pram from the Raynot Military Training Academy. Seta had personally fought the best of the best at the Grand Festival. But Lewis was on a whole other level. He wasn't just strong. Lewis also had leadership skills and patience. Seta never expected Lewis would actually agree to be his friend after all that. Captain, they're coming for us! Aren't we going to talk strategy? So Seta couldn't cheer for Louis anymore. Not that he needed to. The opponents were already trying to stop Louis with everything they had. Fire, ice, earth, wood. They threw every damn thing they could at him. Lewis dodged every attack and charged right at them. All done? My turn. Panicked, they threw up a thick, magical ice wall, but Lewis shattered it with one punch. He turned the flying debris into a volley of ice shards, sending them right back at his opponents. With Lewis around, did you all just forget about us? While Louis threw their formation into chaos, Jason caught the arrow ball. Their defense was in tatters. They had no way to block him. Take this. Jason's specialty is his throwing arm, raising the score to 2-0. After that, all eyes were on Lewis. Jason and the others used that opening to attack the weakened defense, completely breaking through their lines. The entire stadium couldn't believe their eyes. A normal arrowball game has maybe 3 to 4 goals, but X-Knit Academy scored a record 11 goals, forcing the other team to surrender. There wasn't a glimmer of hope for them to even score a single point for pride. Looks like that kid wasn't just talking big. He might actually be the real deal. The crowd's opinion of X-Knit Academy started to change. Back in the waiting room, Professor Hotto came to find him. Your appointment is set, tonight at 7 o'clock. And remember, don't eat anything beforehand. Lewis walked nervously to the meeting point. The principal was already waiting for him outside. They passed through a magic door and inside. Welcome. Overlord Terran was seated on a throne, every bit the king. Louis was startled by the sheer force of his magic. Is he a dragon too? Tehran was a supreme sorcerer, on the verge of becoming half-human and half-dragon, so it wasn't all that surprising. Overlord. Terran had prepared a lavish dinner. He said he'd known of Lewis for a long time. 5 years ago, Terran had observed him from afar during his search for the 10 prodigies. Lewis himself was once on the list of 11 candidates, but things were very different now. I'll get straight to the point. Can you tell me what exactly happened to you all this time? Lewis understood. In Tehran's eyes, he was just a mistake. Living proof that even a supreme sorcerer could be wrong. He wanted Lewis to admit it himself, just to prove that he hadn't made a mistake. But right now, there was only one thing Lewis could say. It seems that no matter how talented I am, my efforts will never be recognized. Terran propped his chin on his hand, looking puzzled. Effort? Are you two related or something? Why is it always about effort? The principal smiled at Lewis. This was why he was so fond of the boy. In that case, what efforts have you made? Louis answered honestly that he had recently been focusing on martial arts. I overcame my mana disorder through martial arts training, and that's how I gained this immense strength. I can even cast magic without an incantation now. And you expect me to believe that? Overlord Tehran guessed that Lewis must have used some artifact that even he didn't know about. It's possible, the principal agreed, which made Tehran shrug at a loss for words. Well, there's still plenty of time. I'll continue to observe you. Let's see if all that effort of yours amounts to anything against my prodigies. Lewis just smiled. Let him watch. He was just as curious to see how the Supreme Sorcerer's chosen ones stacked up against him. Is that so? It was the first time Overlord Terran had been talked back to like that. He didn't know how to react. After Lewis left, Overlord Terran turned to the principal of X-Knit. Are you afraid I'm going to eat your student alive? Talented sorcerers are always welcome. I'm just a little curious, that's all. The principal didn't know what to say to that blatant act of innocence. He could only wonder what else Tehran was curious about. Tehran figured the headmaster didn't have any secrets to hide from him, which sparked a different kind of curiosity. So nosy for an old man. Then again, I've seen it all. That brat subtly threatened me. The headmaster was speechless. Lewis was just an innocent, naive boy, but in Terran's eyes, he looked like a villain. Tehran noticed that Louis showed no fear at all, while countless mages trembled before him. How interesting. I hope the brat I've taken an interest in can actually accomplish something. Just then the crowd in the stands was cheering, chanting Doom Pram's name. He scowled, disliking the sound of the fans. To him it was all just fleeting noise. Another person rushed in to report something. His face darkened as he asked, "Are you sure?" "Positive. I saw it with my own eyes. That guy, Louis, went to the tower with headmaster Zenik." This news made Doom clench his fists in bitter resentment because the Overlord wasn't testing him, but was testing someone else. Louis had caused quite a commotion at the Grand Festival, so Doom had watched his match. There was a lot of talk saying he was a tough opponent, because his magic was rather special. But Doom didn't care. No matter how high he climbed or how much he struggled, he wasn't worthy of being his opponent. In his eyes, Louis was just a freak. But the thought of Overlord Terran summoning Louis to praise him or something drove Doom mad. He slammed his fist into the wall, startling everyone. It was the first time they had ever seen him show such anger. Seething with jealousy, Doom swore he wouldn't forgive Louis for daring to compete for his favor. The only one to be acknowledged by Tehran had to be him. Just as Louis walked out, the two of them came face to face. Louis recognized the person before him as Doom Pram. Without a word of greeting, Doom immediately interrogated Louis about what he had said to the Overlord. He'd been waiting here just to ask this one question. However, there was no reason Louis had to answer. Seeing his uncooperative attitude, Doom immediately drew his sword and threatened him. This guy actually wants to pick a fight. Louis also got into a ready stance. The two then unleashed their magic, one red, one blue, clashing head-on. They glared at each other as if they wanted to eat their opponent alive, to swallow their rival whole. However, Doom was incredibly strong. Louis couldn't see a single weakness. Is he really planning on causing trouble here? This area wasn't part of the tournament grounds. Just as Doom was about to draw his sword, someone came to stop him. It was Irene Bruy. She walked up and teased them. "Is today a reunion or something? Why is everyone gathered here?" Louis retorted. "I just wasn't sure the proper way to greet you two." Seeing the two of them chatting like that, Doom said nothing, immediately turning and walking away. Louis sighed, curious. Is he always so grim? Irene knew Doom quite well. On days like today, it's normal. He rarely opens his mouth. Doom Pram gets more worked up about things related to the Overlord than anyone else. He desperately wants to be acknowledged by him. The Overlord rarely summons anyone like he did today. The fact that he summoned you made Doom think the Overlord has taken an interest in you. Irene wondered if Louis had actually intended to fight Doom just now. However, doing that would be the same as forfeiting the competition, so he certainly wouldn't do something so foolish. And he probably didn't intend to really attack either. He was likely just trying to be intimidating. Doom Pram is like an impenetrable fortress wall. Normal attacks won't faze him at all. But Louis knew that he wouldn't lose either. No matter how sturdy a wall is, if you keep attacking it, it will eventually break. Irene was amused. To her, this young man was truly a peculiar person. While being confident in your abilities is good, you still need to be careful. Doom Pram is merciless. After what happened today, he'll definitely be watching you. At the Zenik Academy dorms, Jason was sprawled out, moaning about how disappointed he was. Louis tried to comfort and reassure his friend, but it wasn't much help. The others thought that getting fourth place in the team competition without Louis was still good. It's not just good, it's phenomenal. Losing the streak is a shame, though, but at least we proved the Academy's strength. Everyone asked about Louis's plan for the upcoming individual matches, but he didn't really have one. To win, of course, Louis had to hold on to the top spot until the very end. He was currently tied for first place in the individual rankings. Louis and the other heavyweights were all competing for the championship. If nothing changes, the next match will be extremely important. A battle for survival. It's a survival match between 32 representatives on an artificial island. The first place winner receives 32 points, while last place gets 1 point. Players will earn points based on their performance, but there will be huge shifts in the rankings. Henker knew Louis would do well, but it seemed he wasn't preparing like everyone else, while others were scrambling to find allies for the survival battle. Contestants are allowed to form alliances to survive together. Distinguishing friend from foe and knowing how to form a strong alliance is considered an effective strategy. Everyone was worried. If the others all have alliances, how could one person, Louis, defeat all of them? Hank thought about trying to team up with Column, but the first person Louis thought of was Irene. Then again, he had no idea if she would agree to join. Even if she did, they'd still be short on people. Suddenly, Seda burst through the door and suggested they team up with Lewis. He had almost completely forgotten this buzz-cut guy even existed. The two of them immediately scrambled to find another member. Seda teased, "Hey, don't you dare bail on us halfway through." That's something Lewis should be saying. After all, Seda is very sincere and will be a reliable person. Besides Seda, they still needed one more person to complete the team. However, people were already lining up to get Iron's approval for an alliance, though it seemed she wasn't accepting any offers. Either she didn't want to team up with anyone, or Luen wanted to ally with Iron. Seda was a bit skeptical, since she's a top contender for the championship, and the two of them weren't close at all. Luen said he and Irene were a little close, so it would be easier to talk to her. Seda was worried because everyone who had approached her had been rejected. What if their offer was rejected too? It was like he was going to confess his feelings. As soon as Luen opened the door, he ran right into Iron. She smiled brightly when she saw him. It turned out Iron had rejected all the other offers because she was waiting for Luen to ask. And of course, Iron would agree to form a team with him without a moment's hesitation. The three of them formed a team and began discussing their strategy. The largest team had 14 members, led by Dalian Malkin from the Frelia Academy of Holy Magic. That guy is a genius who's always ranked among the top 5 contenders for the championship. His magic is mainly light and holy arts. Numbers aren't the issue. And of course, on his team, he's the one to watch out for. But there's someone even more formidable. Pram. The content of the test will change depending on each person's abilities. The next day, the battle began. The students were all wearing armor. When an armor's durability reaches its limit, that person is eliminated and automatically teleported away from the test site. Everyone was transported to an artificial island. The moment Seda stepped off the vehicle, he felt a shiver of fear. All they had to do was survive there for 72 hours. However, these 72 hours would be anything but easy. While everyone else had their own teams and allies, Pram wasn't cooperating with anyone. Even so, he shouldn't be underestimated. Lewis's group would travel from here to the main island by boat. The boat would pass through a safe zone, which would shrink over time. The three of them took off like a shot to secure the best spot. After they had settled in a tree, Seda's stomach started to rumble. Seda didn't understand why no one had grabbed any food from the entrance, especially when all that food looked so delicious. But the one who came up with the idea for an ambush in the first place was none other than Seda himself. Suddenly, an explosion went off nearby. A fight had already broken out. Lewis told Seda not to worry about food because they were about to eat their fill. Their prey had arrived. A group of 5 was cautiously scanning the forest. It seemed they were exhausted but still diligently searching for food and water. At that moment, Seda's steel spear shot down. They realized they'd been ambushed. "Hello, kids. I've been standing here all afternoon." Irene also used a level 5 ice spell, Blizzard. Just as expected of Irene, casting a high-level spell without even batting an eye. Their group tried their best to attack and defend as much as possible. They wouldn't be taken down easily. After all, they were Academy representatives and formidable mages. Now it was Lewis's turn. They noticed a movement in the bushes and immediately cast a spell straight at Lewis. He instantly used time refraction. The ice pierced through their group and attacked the guy at the back of the line. Someone counterattacked with a prison hand, but it was nothing compared to Lewis's explosive fire. They quickly whispered to each other to run, but how could they escape so easily? His explosive fire directly hit the unlucky guy, knocking him flat on the ground, foaming at the mouth and unconscious. Now their group was down to 4. With such an overwhelming difference in power, they had no choice but to surrender. Now Lewis's group had collected a good amount of food, not only fruit, but also meat. If this was enough, it might even last them for 3 days. Looks like those guys were guarding it pretty carefully. No way the food was practically served to us. It would be a crime not to enjoy it. Suddenly, another explosion erupted behind them. It seemed like Dalian's team was heading in that direction. They didn't know what was happening, but it looked like a big deal. Who would go up against a team of more than 10 people? Iron figured this was what people called a bottleneck. Very few mages reached this threshold of power. Seda was shocked. It had only been a year since they last met. Dalian had already reached such a high level. Luen also subconsciously thought of Pram. That guy was seriously strong. The 3 of them were the first group to enter the rest area. No other team had arrived yet. Luen was going to rest for a bit, then do some warm-ups. As for Seda, He'd warm up with a piece of meat. Iron was a bit skeptical because everything was going exactly as Lewis had predicted. This was the central village, the only place on the island, large enough to accommodate a large number of people. Dalian's team would likely come here, and Pram might come here as well. Iron felt it was very reckless. Knowing so many people would be there, how could he still decide to go there alone? But Luen was certain he would go. It was the only way to win, because that's where the kill points are. Every time someone is eliminated, the kill points increase. If Luen were Doom, this would indeed be a good idea. He had tried to put himself in his shoes. Then he thought about what he would do next. Not to mention, Doom also wanted to get the King of Hell's attention. The only way was to act recklessly. Although it was a bit strange, they put it aside for the time being. They would take turns keeping a careful watch. That night, while she was sound asleep, Irene gently shook Louis and said someone had arrived. He looked through a crack in the window and saw a figure completely covered in a black cloak down below. After a careful check, he saw it was just one person. Irene had turned off the lights in case someone discovered their location. Irene woke Seta up, and Louis would take the next watch. The cloaked figure slowly approached the door. Louis was already waiting there. As soon as the person stepped inside, he immediately grabbed him by the collar and threw him aside. He clamped one hand over the man's mouth to keep him from making a sound. Irene would use her light magic to illuminate the room. That man in black was Canalis. Ken hurriedly apologized to everyone, saying he didn't mean to break in, he just needed a place to rest. He said if he'd known Louis's group was here, he wouldn't have come. Can's group had a total of 6 people, but now it was just him. He bitterly explained that they had fallen into Pram's trap. From the very beginning, they had made bold moves, using their numerical advantage to plan an ambush on Malcolm's team to rack up kill points, but then Doom appeared. He had targeted the moment everyone split up to find food. However, not all 6 of them fell into the trap. Only one person did. That's because they had already prepared for situations that required a swift defense. What happened next was the real problem. After hearing an explosion, Dalian brought his entire team to attack them. Even though they fought back fiercely, they couldn't hold out. Including Can, only a mere 2 people managed to escape. However, it wasn't over yet. Just then, Doom reappeared. He had initially vanished and was silently observing, waiting for the battle to end before quietly following them while they were injured. He took advantage of the situation for his own gain. It was a very clever move. Despite knowing how treacherous it was, Can still asked to join Lewis's team, even though the guy was clearly exhausted. But it seemed he had good tactics. Lewis, however, didn't agree. He wanted to know how Canalis could have escaped. If it was Pram, how could he have let his wounded prey get away? Get away while injured, no less. There were only 3 possibilities. 1, this guy was lying. 2, Pram intentionally let him live. Or 3, someone was watching everything here from a distance. Otherwise, this guy wasn't Canalis. Louis used his special eyes to confirm it, but the man in front of him had no identity. He threw a straight punch at his head. The man was a clone. Once that was done, Lewis ordered everyone to leave the area immediately. As dawn approached, the 3 of them were still wandering through the forest, still wondering and discussing the incident from last night. It was possible that Can was attacked by the person who created that clone. There's a high probability that all 7 members of his team have been eliminated. Maybe that clone wasn't really lying after all. Irene wanted to mention something related to the person who confronted Can. It was Chucky. He's also one of the 10 apostles and the head of the Delphania Magic Academy. His specialties are potions and puppetry. He also joined Dalian's team. If that's the case, then Lewis's team would be in a difficult position. Because he uses puppetry, Chucky's position would likely be exposed, and there would surely be ambushes from other teams. But the safe zone will shrink, so the way back to the west will be blocked. There's a saying that circulates in the Maceros Sea: to fight a pirate, you have to use a pirate. The only solution to the problem now is to go hunt the enemy. On Chucky's side, they were also discussing the location of Lewis's group. Chucky knew they were hiding out on the west coast. He had faked almost everything, but unfortunately, he was still found out in the end. Being discovered like that surprised everyone. The puppet was destroyed because some guy had trapped it. Now things would get more difficult, as the 3 members of Louis's team, Adele included, were all troublesome opponents. Dalian decided to go capture them, use all their remaining firepower, and end this, once and for all. He led his teammates toward the west coast, but it seemed like some other team was fighting nearby, and the situation looked extremely intense. With a battle of this scale, Lewis was sure to be there. The group shot off like a rocket. It was time to score some points. Upon seeing his prey, he immediately used his sacred spear to fire straight at them. However, it wasn't Lewis's group. The three of them were still hiding nearby, observing the situation. They recognized it as Dalian's holy magic. Everything was going according to plan. The moment they heard the blast, the enemy came swarming over, but in reality, the three of them weren't even there. The opponent had revealed themselves. Now it was time to collect kill points. Lewis appeared suddenly from behind and took down one of their group members. They didn't even have time to register what was happening. The number of people on Dalian's team had decreased, which meant the fight with Doom was real. However, in terms of points, the three of them were still far behind, even counting their 3 temporary allies. In total, they had 6 people. Seeing there were only 6 of them, a guy from Dalian's group charged forward without hesitation. However, a blaze of fire from behind sent him flying 80 meters away. This terrifying power could only belong to Doom Pram. He appeared without saying a word. He directly wiped out Dalian's group. It seemed they had another temporary ally. After eliminating Dalian's team, all the survivors were now present here. Perhaps the match was finally coming to an end. Realizing they were facing Doom Pram, they quickly signaled each other to retreat to their base, but Dalian refused. In this situation, they needed to group up and fight. Lewis and the others were also ready. He used time refraction to phase through their group, followed by a seismic punch that made the ground tremble. Doom Pram swept past Louis like a gust of wind and declared he would finish him off himself. A while later, in the observation room, only 10 people remained, all of them promising students. Lewis had truly piqued the Underworld King's curiosity. That kid had said he would prove himself superior to the 10 apostles, but whether he had a chance of defeating Doom Pram or not remained a big question mark after that battle ended. Lewis's group had stopped at Base B, near the center of the island. The Eastern Alliance was down to just Dalian, Malcolm, and Chucky. The temporary allies had also disappeared along with Doom Pram. Just then, an announcement declared the mission was complete. Although it had been a long time since he'd done a mission, with enough effort, he finally completed it smoothly. At that moment, Irene also woke up. She reminded Louis that he needed to eat breakfast, and that Seta had already saved a portion for him. He had to admit Seta's cooking skills were truly excellent. After eating, they enjoyed some tea together. "Aaron, I have something to tell you." She'd been wanting to ask Lewis for a long time what he planned to do after graduation. She was a bit curious. With his incredible abilities, he probably wouldn't choose an ordinary path. The mages are all competing against each other in this test. Soon enough, they'll have to step out into society. At that moment, they will begin a life of symbiosis. Some will join the ranks of knights in a certain territory. Some will take on the responsibility of protecting the country under the royal army. Some will become members of the Magic Tower, and others will join special teams to earn money. Those are the normal paths. As for Lewis, he didn't know. He'd never even thought about it. Just last year, Lewis was at the bottom of the class, so he didn't have time to think about the future back then. At that time, he first had to figure out how to even become a mage. After this test is over, Lewis will surely have some idea of what he'll do. Maybe he'll return to the academy. Irene wasn't much different. She had never been sure what kind of mage she would become. She just did what people around her told her to do. Things like, "Irene, become a great mage." So, she made her own decision. She wanted to defeat Doom Pram. Irene thought that by doing so, she would find her own path and figure out what kind of mage she wanted to be. Every year, Irene was always ranked second. Doom Pram was the mountain she had to climb, the lesson she absolutely had to complete. Lewis really respected Irene's ambition because everyone has their own problems to solve. Right now, the safe zone was shrinking faster and faster. They should set out in about an hour. In that case, tonight, the only safe places left are the Central Village and Base A. Assuming both Dalian and Chucky are in the Central Village, taking it over would be a good idea. But we can't rule out the possibility that Doom is lying in ambush there. But just sitting around waiting for them to attack first wouldn't work either. The three of them would run into trouble with the safe zone. Attacking recklessly wasn't an option either. This wasn't the time to attract attention. They needed to be extremely careful. Suddenly, Lewis had an idea. There were only a few people left. Right now, just moving up one rank would earn them a lot of points. As Irene said, everyone would be acting very cautiously. Not to mention, the three of them had just caused a commotion with that brawl. Early this morning, It's highly likely that no one will react to their actions. That means now is the perfect chance to catch Doom Pram. Dalian and Chucky just lost all their members. The remaining survivors are very weak. They'll definitely choose to hide. But Doom is different. He'll show himself because he's confident in his skills. Besides, they couldn't just ignore him, or the three of them would be in danger too. As for where to find Doom, leave it to Lewis. He would bring him to them. That night, Lewis started crossing the forest, searching. He didn't think he could find him just by looking at the minimap. It wasn't that simple. But he could tell how many people were at a base. If it showed 3, it was the remaining group. If it was 2, it was Dalian and Chucky. And if it was Doom, it would definitely be a single dot. Just like that, Lewis successfully found a house. He stood outside and yelled, demanding that Doom come out. As expected, the person inside the house was Doom. His group looked worried when they saw Lewis arrive with Doom, afraid their teammate had been captured. However, captured? What do you mean, captured? Lewis was the one who brought him here. He never intended to set an ambush in the first place. Acting stealthily and setting traps just isn't in Lewis's vocabulary. The reason he brought him here wasn't to fight him. Doom's opponent now is Irene Prius. Doom sighed, looking down on Irene's abilities. He said she wasn't even worthy of a one-on-one fight with him. If she got eliminated now, the Master would be very disappointed. She should have tried to last a little longer to increase her rank. However, that wasn't Irene's goal in this competition. Doom Pram was her goal. Irene Prius, she's truly strong, but she always ends up in second place. She said she felt very anxious because she lost to Doom Pram every year. I heard it's because of her family, so it's hard to know the full story. She doesn't share much. Lewis thinks her way of facing things is to be confident about what kind of mage she will become. That's why he helped set up this confrontation for the two of them. Irene immediately attacked with an ice storm. However, Doom was no ordinary opponent. He blocked the attack and countered. The entire ground shattered. Doom, with eyes as sharp as blades, was looking at Irene. It seemed like she was in a very bad situation. Doom countered with his sword. There was absolutely no way for Irene to dodge the attack. Lewis stepped in to help her. He had said he'd let Irene attack first, not that he'd let her finish him off all by herself. He couldn't afford to lose a valuable teammate like Irene, even if it meant affecting the outcome of the match. Lewis began to challenge Doom. Now he would face him alone. Lewis had learned from Guter how to deal with a swordsman. For a knight, the most important part is their feet. It's not just the anchor that adds power to a sword thrust, but it also helps predict the enemy's next move. So if he focused on Doom Pram's feet, he might be able to defeat him. He charged forward proactively, sword in hand, his heel touching the ground to build up power. This is it. Lewis twisted his body, neatly dodging the sword strike. But just when he thought everything was going according to plan, the magic from the sword suddenly drew Louis's blood. He said he's not a knight, but a mage. People often say there's no such thing as a magic swordsman. That's because they've never seen a real one with their own eyes. Doom attacked relentlessly. Lewis was now completely on the defensive. He had never fought an opponent this strong before. Up until now, when facing mages, Lewis's method has always been to use time refraction to get close, then create an opportunity to exploit his opponent's weakness. But Doom Pram countered this by using his sword. A light slash was all it took to leave another wound on Lewis's leg. This is called radiation impact. This wound will continue to absorb movement, and eventually, he'll be completely trapped, just like Irene. Now it's time to end this. He thrusts his sword into the ground and then casts the level 5 magic, Demon Wings. The sheer pressure blows everything around him away. The ground cracks and shatters, sending rocks flying everywhere. Lewis barely manages to take cover behind a boulder. He truly lives up to his reputation as the annual champion. He's just too strong. He tears a piece of cloth from his sleeve to bandage the wound. Standing in the middle of a flattened wasteland, Doom sighs, expressing his disappointment. He had placed too much hope in Louis. Just then he steps out from behind the boulder and admits that Doom is indeed very strong. For a moment he thought Doom was an impenetrable wall, but there's no way Lewis would give up. That thought has never crossed his mind. Too many people have put their faith in him. That's what drives him to break down this wall. Lewis raises the rings on his hand. Doom thinks this guy must have completely lost his mind. He's going to step up and teach Lewis a lesson, see if he can still run his mouth. Lewis uses the Goblin Fury skill. Flames engulf his body. He warns his opponent to watch his mouth or he'll get his teeth knocked out. With that, they both charge at each other. If Lewis can't dodge this attack, he's dead for sure. But he's no pushover either. Two immense powers collide head-on. The ring on his hand blocks the sword. The tension is clear on both of their faces. It's obvious that their opponent's strength is nothing to scoff at. When the notification appears, damage immunity ring activated, resisting physical damage. That's when Doom's sword shatters, and he himself receives a wound on his shoulder. Lewis seizes the opportunity to kick his left leg, sending Doom tumbling to the ground. Lewis stands before him with the air of a victor in battle. He declares that Doom is not on his level. The only thing he has is an arrogant nature, thinking he's superior to others. And to end things, Lewis will give him one punch. And so he successfully defeated Doom Pram. Only now can Seda finally breathe a sigh of relief. If Lewis had lost, the next one to get his butt kicked would have been him. Who else could it be? However, this victory was really thanks to luck. He almost lost. The person with the most mixed emotions right now is Irene. Lewis walks over and apologizes for interfering in her match. Irene gives an awkward smile, saying she should be the one saying that. Irene put the whole team in danger because of her selfishness, and because of Lewis, she can no longer achieve her goal in this competition. Irene no longer cares about that. Her goal isn't to defeat Doom Pram anymore. Irene's new target is Lewis, even though she knows this goal won't be easy, but she still believes that one day she will definitely surpass him. So, a total of 5 people remained, including the 3 of them. Dalian and Chucky fought back fiercely, but they were no match for Lewis's team. Finally, after a fierce battle, those 2 were also eliminated. And then there were 3. Seda never thought he'd make it this far. Lewis turns and asks if everyone wants to have a final match, but Irene refuses. She says she isn't in top condition right now and will try harder next time. So they agree to a rematch another time, as Irene seems really tired. That means Lewis's opponent now is Seda. Seda puts on a show. Even if you're the team leader, I won't go easy on you. You haven't seen my true skills yet, have you? So bring it on! But we all know how this ends. Seda gets sent flying like a bird after one punch, and with that, the match is over. Everyone starts a victory party, congratulating the Academy's representative for taking first place. Seda and Irene are there too. They had fought side by side for so long. How could they possibly miss the chance to congratulate him? As for Seda, he was determined to come along. Seeing everyone talking and laughing together like this, it makes him feel very happy. After the battle for survival, Lewis became the sole number 1. Although Doom Pram had many kill points, his low survival score caused his rank to drop. Although Dalian and Irene were on the list of championship contenders, they still ranked below Lewis. If he can keep this up, then victory will no longer be a distant dream. Jason is going crazy with happiness. He never thought he'd see the day he'd be sitting at the same table as the goddess Irene. He could die happy now. Everyone starts raising their glasses to celebrate Louis's victory. The atmosphere makes everyone feel incredibly happy after the results of the competition. People start gossiping about Lewis. They think there's no way he can win this festival. Doom is the one most affected. He can't believe he lost. He let his guard down and never imagined that Louis's target wasn't him, but his sword. Doom realized it as that split second, but still swung his sword, thinking victory was certain. And then he lost the match. King Yama watches him, growing impatient, wondering if his lordship will ever come to find him again. Although his teammate tries to comfort him, right now he just wants to be alone. The news that Louis Adele defeated Doom Pram spreads everywhere. A new generation of talented mages is born. The headmaster is very proud. He only thought the boy would do well. He never expected him to get this far. He never thought Lewis could defeat such a powerful opponent. Terran approaches and notices the headmaster looks very pleased, probably because of his student Louis's victory. But this sight hurts King Yama. The Grand Festival of Pride is almost over. A few days have passed since the survival test. Louis's team held on to 4th place in the group test with 5 wins and 2 losses. They nearly lost the final match, which knocked them out of 3rd place, a tough break for the former Academy kids. For fools like them, this was nothing short of a miracle. Now all that's left is the individual test, an obstacle course competition held throughout the city. Contestants will be judged on 3 criteria: athletics, combat, and swimming. Since this is a competition between mages, they're allowed to summon mounts or use teleportation magic. Everyone in the stands is chanting Louis's name. He desperately wants to enjoy this moment, but now is not the time. It's too early to celebrate when the winner hasn't been confirmed. Seta reminds him, "Today is the individual test. There's no one to help you, so don't put yourself in any danger." Louis can only say he'll do his best. A gunshot rings out and everyone starts the test. Some summon their guardian spirits. Others turn invisible. No one is backing down. Dalian suggests a temporary alliance with Irene, but she immediately refuses. Doom mounts his horse. He then flies up, wiping out a swarm of goblins with a single magic sword strike. It seems everyone prefers to go solo. Even after observing him for 6 years, Dalian still finds it hard to get close to him. So it's best they go their separate ways and not bother each other. Even though he's defeated a ton of monsters, Doom still hasn't seen Louis. Could he have gotten way ahead of them? That's impossible. He's been at the front since the start and has only seen these two. If so, Louis must still be behind. He turns to ask Irene where Louis is. Why hasn't he shown up yet? However, she doesn't know either. Now that she thinks about it, it is strange. They've been in the lead this whole time, but Louis and the others are nowhere to be seen. They still have time to catch up, yet not a single person has. Just then, there's a movement from behind. It's Louis. He's finally caught up, but everyone else has disappeared. Earlier, people were confused when they saw he wasn't moving. They thought he might have given up. But no, Louis has been waiting for this day. Ever since deciding to join the Grand Festival, he spent half a year in intense physical training. He's extremely confident about this round. But Louis is a close combat mage. Turning his back on pursuers would put him at a huge disadvantage, so he had to create his own advantage. He would take everyone down from behind, one by one, before moving forward. One by one, they were eliminated, until Louis lost count. The next target was Seta, and even though they're close in this competition, it's every man for himself. He knocked Seta straight out of the competition. Louis had eliminated everyone else, some by force, the rest simply surrendered. Now, nothing stands in the way of those two. Doom declares that this time, things will be different. He's ready for a fight. But there are still a few people chasing them from behind. He gets on his horse, saying he'll wait for Louis at the finish line. Doom ignores them all and charges headfirst toward a trapped castle, one that was set with many traps for its defense. The treasure inside has already been excavated, so the traps inside now serve as obstacles for the competition. A place full of deadly peril for anyone who dares to charge in recklessly. That's why normally, the safe way is to disarm the traps. This is also a perfect method for assessing a mage's knowledge and risk management skills. But disarming traps takes too much time. Louis, however, intends to bring this wall down. Destroying this thick castle wall should be impossible. He knows that. These are the ruins of an abandoned castle. It would be possible if he aimed for the spots that are no longer solid. That's why he uses his target eye to observe the wall. The whole thing is hard, or super hard, except for a single brick that's old and corroded. Louis punches that brick with all his might. The others, busy disarming traps, have no idea what Louis is doing. He must be joking. Who tries to break down this wall? I mean, he's strong, but trying to break the wall with his bare hands is just ridiculous. But a few moments later, the wall actually cracks and crumbles. This is insane. Dalian shyly approaches and asks, "Hey, can I use this path too?" "Sure, you can." "Yeah, right." Louis immediately seals the path. So now, only Louis and Doom are in the lead. He quickly catches up to him. Doom is about to exit, but he's clearly rushing. He's taken an arrow to the shoulder. Doom desperately wants to beat Louis. At this point, he has to win, no matter the cost. The spirit horse he summoned is about to time out. If it disappears now, Doom will have no chance of winning. They race against each other, dragging one another down into a ravine as they clear the final obstacle. They fall down a cliff face. If he uses magic to cross the cliff, Louis will be at a disadvantage, so he has to swim out of here as fast as he can. Doom immediately uses magic to freeze the water. Louis is completely trapped, unable to move. Just like that, Doom Pram has successfully stalled his opponent and pulled ahead. Louis struggles with all his might to break free from the ice. Then he sprints to catch up to him. They're both approaching the finish line and 10 Stadium. From this point on, there are no more obstacles. So, the only thing left to do is run. Louis wants a rematch, but given Doom's current state, he might just lose again. The two charge at each other, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. The spectators in the stands have no idea who has won. Suddenly, the stadium doors swing open. The spirit horse enters first. But where are the mages? Just then, a figure appears on the projection screen. Model. Lewis was standing there, while Dumb was lying face down on the ground. It seemed he had overexerted himself getting through the trap zone, even though his movements were a bit slow, just as he'd said. But that wasn't something to worry about right now. Lewis confidently took the final steps to the finish line, with 2 victories in the survival battle and the triathlon, simultaneously securing first place in the individual competition. The highest overall score belonged to Lewis. The grand festival had finally come to an end. Everyone cheered, calling his name, calling him the new mage instead of a failure. Those voices seemed to be telling someone like Lewis, who had endured everything for the past 6 years, someone locked in a prison of solitude, a lonely soul, that he had worked hard all this time. The cheers felt like a reward for all of Lewis's efforts. He didn't want to lose this praise. That evening, many carriages brought select nobles to the party. It was said that not every noble family was invited. They all came to meet Lewis. He was sitting there, bored, wanting to go back to the academy. Suddenly, Irene appeared. She found it strange that no one here had come to talk to him. It must be because he looked so arrogant. And Lewis even came to a party dressed in this half-assed style. But from what she knew, there was another reason. It was clear most of the nobles here wanted to get close to Lewis, so even if he acted so arrogant, it couldn't be that not a single person would come and talk to him. It seems someone spread a rumor about him. That person must be powerful enough to make any noble not even think of speaking to him. Just then, an announcement was made that the grand banquet had officially begun. 32 student representatives will follow the instructions during dinner with Hades. The dishes were laid out like a king's feast. On the surface, today's party was a dinner, but in reality, it was an overall evaluation of the competition. For the students who performed poorly, it was like a death row inmate's last meal. Lewis thought only Hades would be attending, yet there were 2 seats of honor. Just then, Hades arrived. Everyone bowed to him in unison. On the outside, they were bowing, but Bichai. On the inside, it was more like, "Greetings, your majesty, Hades, my ass." It was infuriating. Suddenly, another person was invited into the banquet. This golden-haired young man was the crown prince. Everyone bowed deeply. "Long live the crown prince!" Only Lewis had no idea who the hell this guy was. Everyone at the party was extremely tense. Hades spoke. Not a single one of the 10 crusaders managed to beat Lewis Adele, not even once. Is the skill gap really that large? How disappointing. I'm ashamed to even call you my disciples. Dumb lowered his head, promising never to perform so poorly again. The man believed that second place was a rank for the incompetent. This grand festival proved the old saying right. Even a small stream can hold a dragon. This atmosphere was not the least bit comfortable. It felt like this party was set up to humiliate the 10 crusaders, and Lewis was just the tool Hades was using to do it. But he wasn't the only one making him uncomfortable. This guy had been staring daggers at Lewis from the moment the party began. Crown Prince Somerton. Although he started in the disadvantaged position of being the 3rd prince, with his brilliant strategic mind as his weapon, he successfully ousted his own brothers from the kingdom, and became the sole crown prince. A man skilled in both scholarship and combat, he was nearly perfect in every aspect. He remembered Irene's words. "It seems someone spread a rumor about you. That person must be powerful enough to make any noble not even think of speaking to you." Hades asked Lewis how he felt after winning the festival. He was silent for a moment, then said he felt uncomfortable. Lewis was satisfied with the results of the competition, but he wasn't comfortable at all, because his achievements were being used to criticize and belittle the honor and effort that the other students here had put in. Irene quickly tried to stop him, afraid he would go too far. This sent a chill of fear through everyone sitting at the party. Hades asked again, "You mean you don't want your results to be used to put others down? But isn't a sense of inferiority one of the factors that helps people grow? You understand that well, don't you? In my opinion, it seems more like you're inciting others to be hostile towards me. There's a difference between pointing out their weaknesses and encouraging them to try harder, and inciting hostility by harping on their failures. Aren't those 2 completely different things? And I don't come from some small stream either. My hometown of Adele is a small place, but it's more beautiful than any lavish palace," Lewis answered confidently. He asserted that his Zenith Academy wasn't a place for others to look down on and call a small stream. This fierce rebuttal from Louis surprised Hades. The Crown Prince immediately burst out laughing. He acknowledged that Lewis was really something else, daring to talk back to the old man. Oh, man. I'm laughing so hard my stomach hurts. This is hilarious. I'm tearing up. Where did this guy crawl out from? Haha, I thought he was from some backwater place. So it's the small and beautiful Adele, is it? Small but very beautiful, huh? I'll have to pay it a visit sometime, the Crown Prince said in a sarcastic, prodding tone. Hades said, I understand your feelings. If Master Tyrion heard this nonsense, he'd probably be tired too, but I doubt he would change his mind. It'll be a little different. A bit of a fresh take compared to Tyrion. He's really looking forward to what's coming. And with that, the party tonight comes to an end. However, the third prince directly requested to have tea with Luen, and he wasn't about to take no for an answer. The two of them sat talking in a private room. He didn't know why the prince wanted to talk in here, but it certainly wasn't to congratulate him on the grand festival. Turns out this third prince wants Lewis to work for him from now on, and this time he won't accept no for an answer either. He's giving Lewis 1 month to get his affairs in order. He'll transfer him to the cavalry training grounds and arrange for his living quarters there. And the matter of his citizenship, too. How can the prince's right-hand man be a foreigner? Lewis wondered. The Empire already has countless talented mages, like Dunn, for example. So why would they need a new mage like him? No matter how strong he was, he still ended up losing to Lewis. And he has no desire to keep a failure by his side. One more thing. After our talk today, remember this well. I prefer hearing yes over questions. The first reason is that the old man has been recommending Lewis for several years. He kept telling the old man to consider which mage. She was talented enough for him, but he never mentioned anyone's name. The second reason is that he likes your guts. The kind of guts to show up in ragged clothes in front of a bunch of leaders. The kind that craves power and dares to express disagreement with the old man. And finally, the kind that repeatedly questions the prince despite his warnings. In politics, sometimes you need a guy who knows how to stir things up. Lewis proceeded to ask another question. So my job is just to offer advice? Is that it? The prince wants Louis to protect him from his damn older brothers who don't want their little brother to be the crown prince. Louis showed his displeasure. He knew he'd say that, which is why he warned him beforehand that he wouldn't take no for an answer. Luen knew this could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, the chance to become the right-hand man of the most powerful prince in the Empire. After all, most mages choose to align themselves with power. Even the Magic Tower, which claims to be dedicated to magical research, is no different. If he passes up this opportunity today, he might regret it for a long time. But Luen didn't want to be anyone's mage, so he flat-out refused. The prince thought he was being perfectly rational. But the truth is, Lewis was just being completely nuts. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, yet he insisted he wouldn't regret it. Then he bowed to the prince and left. It's as if today's conversation never happened. Everyone sees you as the brightest jewel of this year's grand festival, and his hobby is collecting jewels. And to this day, there has never been a jewel he couldn't obtain, because the ones he can't have, he destroys. This could also be seen as a warning, and it was clearly a threat. Right now, Lewis doesn't even know if he made the right decision. Was it the right one or not? In the end, though, he just wants to be a mage with his own unique style. Somerton was very curious about the name the old man had recommended. He seems very special. It looks like things can't be resolved the easy way. Although the prince threatened him a bit, it doesn't seem to have had any effect. Of course, he's not going to give up that easily, especially when it comes to his collecting hobby. In the end, Luen will belong to Somerton, because he has already decided. Luen went back to his training duties, and with that, he was done for the day. He lay stretched out on the grass. Trang started complimenting his own body, saying, "Looks like I'm getting hotter and hotter." Luen got goosebumps. What kind of man talks in such a creepy way? But hey, I'm a real woman, you know. Luen was like, holy crap, I have a gender? And yet the two of them have even bathed together. There wasn't much to see down there anyway. Trang's already seen it all. Lewis just chuckled and walked away. Don't joke like that again next time, old lady. The next day, everyone parted ways tearfully at the docks. Jason was sobbing. I'm leaving first. You stay here and take care of yourself, okay? After everyone boarded the ship, Lewis also set off for Leverty to complete his schedule as the champion of the Grand Festival. This mage who calls himself a wildcat was his guide. He's from the Magic Tower. If diplomatic vision can't identify a person's name, it means that person has quite high-level skills. So they're at least on par with, or even stronger than, the professors at the academy. He looks to be about 30 years old. Wildcat began to briefly go over his schedule. First was a visit to the palace to be honored. Noticing the discomfort in his way of speaking, Louis pointed it out right away. But to him, this was as comfortable as it gets. Louis felt helpless but couldn't say anything more. His schedule included a trip to the magic tower to perform the ritual of being chosen by a treasure. There was also a chance he might not receive anything, because in this ritual, the treasures themselves do the choosing, so the treasures are sentient, just like Kingram. Finally, Luen would be assigned a mission. Normally, students aren't given missions, but the champion of the Grand Festival is an exception. This event is a declaration to the entire world of the formation of a new generation of mages. It is considered an initiation. He gave Louis a list and asked him to choose a mission from it. It contained many missions: search, subjugation, assassination, and knowledge exploration. Trang whispered something in Louis's ear. Immediately, he had chosen his mission. Afterwards, Louis was taken to Moran Palace, the Crown Prince's second palace. Everyone was inside, waiting for him. Stray Cat excused himself. Louis was confused about what was happening when the door opened. The one who appeared was the Crown Prince. "Welcome to my empire, Louis Adel." First, he received a reward of 10,000 gold coins from the Crown Prince. This amount far exceeded the entire annual budget of the Adel domain. Seeing the Crown Prince's magnanimous attitude, it seemed he still hadn't given up on his intentions. After that, Louis hurried to his next appointment. He felt that the people here must have great stamina, always walking back and forth in this ridiculously huge palace. Before meeting Hades, Stray Cat had to confirm one more time if he was truly decided on choosing that mission. Louis had chosen the most difficult mission. He was curious what Hades would say. As soon as Louis entered, Hades was already waiting inside. He knew the boy had chosen the reconnaissance mission. "The safest mission is the subjugation one, escorted by the royal army. You just need to defeat a few fancy Siciliano bandits. You might even be honored as a hero." He couldn't understand why the boy chose that place, especially since it is a very barren land. However, Louis didn't think so, because Heavenly Mountain is Kingram's homeland and the place where Draka stayed for 100 years. Heavenly Mountain is located at the northernmost point of the Jordan Kingdom, considered the abode of ancient elves. But now, not a single elf remains there. Only Kingram, the Academy's treasure, survived. The rest all died in the terrible battle of that year. That land is now just a desolate, barren place. There's a reason this reconnaissance mission is classified as extremely difficult, and that's because of the barrier there. A type of barrier that cannot be broken by any kind of magic. To this day, countless mages and scholars have yet to find any clues. This reconnaissance mission is to find out what that barrier is, Hades wondered. Why Louis was so interested in exploring such a desolate land, or perhaps he found the theories about the place interesting, thinking that the elf god made it inviolable. It's true that other people would have no reason to do so, but a place where the world destroyer, Dracagonia, stayed for a whole 100 years, for him, that reason alone was more than enough. But there was no need for a lengthy explanation. Because this is the hardest mission, Hades advised Louis that if it's for the sake of pride, it would be best to choose again. A mission with high difficulty doesn't mean you'll achieve more. It's called difficult simply because it's a mystery no one has solved yet. Louis replied with great confidence. If a 16-year-old mage uncovers such a mystery, wouldn't that be an even more extraordinary achievement? Hades didn't seem to trust Louis's abilities very much, constantly underestimating him. He even thought the boy would be the first champion in the Grand Festival's history to fail his mission. Louis paid no mind to the old man's nonsense. If that's the case, it could also be considered an extraordinary achievement. Hades asked Louis if he knew why he had introduced him to Crown Prince Sompton. It's because doing so would keep Louis in antenne, and he could also observe him. Although he didn't know if the boy's special ability had anything to do with his choice of mission, but he would still watch his every move. Back home, Louis lay on his bed, confiding in Trang. He didn't know if he could do well on this mission. He was also a little worried, afraid he wouldn't be able to find the barrier. After all, that place has been isolated from the outside world for so many centuries. Trang asserted that no human to date has been able to discover it, but Louis Adel can, because he has the ability to surpass the limits of humanity. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. It was Delicious Wild Boar and Stray Cat. What a pain, these names. But what can you do? This is the king's weird hobby, after all. All the mages here are called names like that. It sounds like a farm. They came to take Louis to the treasure vault to complete the final reward ceremony. The treasure vault in Maytop is divided into 4 sections: Section C, and Section B, Section A, and Section X. The artifacts in Section C are the most common, while those in Section X are the rarest. He would be given a tour of all of them except Section X. That place is not normally open to anyone. Unless something special happens, not even His Majesty can enter. And so, following their guidance, Louis began his tour of the treasure vaults, starting from Section C. He picked up a rather large sword. He was told it was one of the weapons they had collected. From those used in the battle against the demons, selecting the ones still in good condition. Louis stared at the sword. It looked just as amazing as Doombram's light sword. As expected of Maytop's treasure vault, even though it's Section C, the quality is still much better than the vaults of the nobility. Next was an in-depth book on the shape-shifting of tin. A book that was no longer in publication, and this copy was 100 years old. There were many different kinds of books here, like Beyond the 7 Levels of a Mage's Journey, Exploring Uncharted Lands, and The Search for Ancient Creatures. Louis wanted to read these books during his time in the tower. Occasionally, the master of the tower would grant permission to read them, as long as one didn't try to keep them. Area B is a treasure trove of knowledge, from ancient spellbooks to rare historical documents and legendary manuscripts. But ignoring the temptations of Area B, Louis proceeded to tour Area A. However, not a single treasure in Area A reacted to him. Louis turned to ask the 2 mages if anyone had ever failed to be chosen by a treasure before. No. Well, it's happened, but it's very rare. For a mage to even enter Area A and be acknowledged by just 1 or 2 treasures is proof of their extraordinary ability. In his case, not a single one reacted to him. It's truly disheartening. Seeing this, Trang chirped to lift Louis's spirits. There's nothing to be disappointed about. This stuff is just garbage anyway. To humans, these things might be considered precious, but there are other things that are truly rare. As Trang spoke, it pointed to the door of Area X. In there's something created by a dragon. It reeks of an unwashed dragon. Besides, no matter how rare the treasure is, how are you supposed to get in there? For now, just focus on what's in front of you. Suddenly, a blue light enveloped everything. It emanated from the door of Area X. The 2 mages were terrified because this special event hadn't happened in 56 years. And then, the inevitable happened. Louis Adele had resonated with the Fang of Kun Khan. The 3 great treasures stored in Area X were the Scepter of Angon, the Scales of Mosi, and the Fang of Kun Khan. These 3 treasures all had one thing in common. They helped their master reach the pinnacle of fame and glory. The Scepter of Angon was forged by the hands of the mage of the same name. He was the very first human mage. The scepter has the ability to infinitely amplify the destructive power of magic, and it is the symbol of the supreme mage. 56 years ago, Teleron was chosen by the Scepter of Angon, and throughout history, anyone chosen by the scepter has always risen to the peak of glory, becoming the master of the magic tower. The Scales of Mosi is an impenetrable suit of armor capable of resisting any attack and any type of magic. Once every century, this armor chooses a master. All who have been chosen have become legendary knights. As for the Fang of Kun Khan, it is a treasure from the goblin chief. The first one, and also the most mysterious. For hundreds of years, it has not chosen a single master. Yet, it chose Louis Adele, meaning his destiny is to be the new owner of the throne. Louis lifted it with ease, while they had struggled just to bring it into the tower. They even had to mobilize several generals for its transport. This Fang is not something one person can just lift, like it was nothing, because it carries the attributes and strength of a goblin. Teleron began to piece everything together. The ability reminiscent of a goblin, being chosen for a reconnaissance mission in the heaven-defying mountains. The Fang of Kun Khan, the first goblin chief. He immediately ordered his subordinate to summon the clairvoyant mage. Louis had decided to move to the west. This was to make the journey to the heaven-defying mountains more convenient. The time limit for the reconnaissance mission was 1 month. Wildcat gave him a stipend, an ID card, and a mana train ticket. Wildcat seemed to have something he wanted to say to Louis. As mages of the Magic Tower, they were not allowed to express any personal opinions. But as a senior, there really was something he wanted to say. The Magic Tower is a wonderful place for mages who are under its control, but it will be an incredibly cruel place for those who are not. Be very careful and always question everything. Louis took Wildcat's advice to heart. The ancient castle of Tesserin was located in the city closest to the heaven-defying mountains. It was built for the purpose of protecting the continent from goblin invasions, also known as Hell's Shield. For that reason, the walls of Tesserin were built much higher than those of other castles. It was also accompanied by a mighty armed force and an iron will. That's what Lewis had read in books. But seeing it so desolate now, it was clear it had lost its purpose. It was originally built to stop goblin invasions, but the threat from the goblins had vanished on its own. Because of that, the guards now dared to drink themselves silly in broad daylight. The place where people once fought with resilience was now a thing of the past. A big, scarred guy came to intimidate and rob Lewis, but Lewis paid him no mind, simply placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. It was enough to make the man fall face first into the ground, his butt in the air. Lewis went to a small inn and woke up the innkeeper, who was fast asleep, telling him he wanted to rent a horse. But there were no horses left here, and there were no other rental places around. This was the only place in Tesserin with stables. It's called a stable, but there are no horses? What a joke. The truth was there were 3, but someone had already rented them that morning. Normally, this place is very quiet, but for some reason customers came in droves today. Startled, Lewis had to ask the innkeeper again. The owner confirmed that it was only for today. It's only busy today. Normally, not a soul comes by. He began to suspect something. It was too much of a coincidence. Trang had sensed it since they boarded the Mana train. Someone was watching them. And just as it said, a mysterious person, completely cloaked, was monitoring their every move. After realizing they were being followed, Lewis acted immediately. First, he asked the innkeeper to notify him right away if anyone came asking about him. Next, he set the bait by taking a walk around Tesserin. They would have to wait for Lewis to go out before they could come and ask about him. It was obvious they were people from the Renak Empire. Louis wasn't sure if they were sent by the Crown Prince, angry that he had rejected the offer, or if it was the ever-curious Supreme Mage. But in short, Louis didn't want to meet either of them. He needed to resolve this, before heading to the peak of the heaven-defying mountains. He now knew for sure that he was being watched, but he couldn't let them keep tailing him. However, the innkeeper reported that no one had come looking for him. Not a single soul, ever since Lewis left the inn. But there was one thing the innkeeper found very strange. There was a period where he lost his memory for about 3 minutes. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't remember. Lewis knew this was a mind control spell, a level 6 magic. It's a type of magic that invades and controls another person's mind. The controlled person loses all memory of that time. While they are being controlled, the caster sees these memories instead. This opponent was not only strong, but also very cautious. If they saw the innkeeper's memories, it meant they now knew that Lewis had realized he was being followed. After returning to his room, someone had left a note on his headboard. "I mean you no harm, so don't waste your time looking for me. Just carry on with your mission." For Luen, who was already furious, barging into his room like this and telling him not to worry was nothing short of a threat. At this point, if they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. Touch him, and he'd burn them to the ground. Luen ran outside as fast as he could to find them, opening his minimap to locate those damned mysterious figures. Seeing this, the heavily cloaked figures immediately gave chase, but with no intention of killing him. Both sides were ready to play with their opponent. The wizard's men landed with a roar in a desolate patch of land. They looked around, searching. One of them spoke up. "The sorcerer's trail has vanished." But the old wizard thought otherwise. "He hasn't vanished. He's waiting for us." Just as he finished his sentence and they took a few more steps, a sound came from the nearby barrels. Luen had been lying in ambush there all along. He leaped out at the perfect moment, attacking and catching the old wizard's men by surprise. He punched one of the wizard's henchmen straight in the face, then turned to look at the remaining one. This terrified the man. In a frantic panic, he cast a spell to attack, but Luen, without a word, shattered the magical barrier. He punched the henchman straight in the face. The man was hit and fell right at the old wizard's feet. At that moment, both sides stood motionless, waiting for the other to make a move. Suddenly, the old wizard burst out laughing. "I was just wondering what kind of person you are. So you really are a monster, aren't you?" Luen's face darkened, his eyes cold and menacing. "Who are you?" The old wizard was still smiling. "The Archmage of the Wizard's Tower sent us here. To protect you young folks, of course." Luen took a defensive stance, questioning him. "You look more like spies to me." The old wizard gave a sinister smile. "It's all the same, really. In any case, you look like you're having fun." Then the old man vanished before Luen's eyes, leaving behind the words, "See you later." Luen approached the two henchmen he had knocked out, looked at their necks, and hesitated. This skull tattoo? They're dark mages. Trang didn't quite understand, so Luen explained, it's a secret group. A group of mages from the tower who handle the dirty work, the mysterious dark mages. They only reveal their group name and tattoo. Their purpose, rank, or leader is unknown. Trang asked anxiously, so what's your impression after meeting them? Luen stated confidently, they're no match for the representatives from the last major tournament. Trang grew worried, but we haven't confirmed the other person's strength. He stood there analyzing. They used level 6 magic. Clearly, they're not just some common thugs. They can watch us from a distance. Trang asked Luen seriously, what are you going to do? But he stood thinking for a long while before making a decision. First, I'm going to make them show their hand. The next day, we immediately set off for Tiansun. The journey to Tiansun was exhausting. We had to walk through arid deserts, but I could feel for certain that we had arrived. Suddenly, Luen sensed something. He placed a hand on his chest to check. He clicked his tongue in annoyance when he discovered the force ring was vibrating. Luen was sweating bullets, but he just smiled and looked up. All he could do was exclaim, this is exactly the satisfying feeling I was looking for. Luen quickly asked Trang on his shoulder, you once said this is the place you lived with Draka, right? It nodded, confirming this was true. Luen plopped down on the ground and sighed. It's not budging at all. How am I supposed to get in? What kind of inhumane idea is this? Are you telling me to destroy this barrier just like that? Trang replied without hesitation. That's right. Then it asked Luen in return, if they were human, they'd definitely try to break the barrier, right? He agreed. Yeah, that was my first thought. Trang reminded him, but they can't break it with ordinary human methods. It added another sentence that was like a revelation to Luen. What would happen if there was an ogre here? It was as if Luen finally understood something. Wouldn't it be better to call an ogre from the inside? Ask them to open the door like a friend. Trang jumped down, stood with its arms crossed, and smiled confidently. Now my thoughts are very clear. Luen suddenly remembered, but as you once said, all the oxes here are dead, aren't they? Trang replied grandly and mysteriously, that's just human thinking. Luen tensed up and turned to look at the shield behind him. Trang advised him one more time. Luen, remember, your power doesn't follow convention, so break it. Luen steeled himself, stood up, and faced the dark shield before him. He placed his hand on the barrier. He felt this impenetrable shield. Luen shouted, can you hear me? I know you'll pretend you can't hear me. I've brought your leader's fang. He lowered his voice, his command like a threat. If you can hear me, open the gate. But what answered Luen was silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Suddenly, the spot where his hand rested on the shield flashed with light. Luen used both hands to brace himself as the power from the shield was too strong. He squinted against the blinding light. The old wizard, who had been watching him for a while, saw this and his eyes widened in astonishment. Witnessing a miracle right before him, he exclaimed, it opened? How could a rookie like him do something that no one has ever done before? The old wizard ran to the shield and pounded on it in a panic. It's closed again! What is going on? The old man had just finished his sentence when Lewis's fist was already in his face. A single punch sent the old man flying several meters away. Luen roared, seizing the opportunity. You can't run away like you did the other day! He slammed his fist into the ground, using an earthquake skill that made the earth tremble violently. The old wizard cried out in pain as he was crushed by the earth and rocks, his face now wounded. Luen cast a vine spell, attacking the old man. The vines wrapped tightly around the wizard, pinning him to the ground, unable to move. He wanted to open his mouth to speak, but he couldn't. Lewis sneered, Did you really think you could get close to me this time? What level are you even on, huh? Let's end this game early. Just as Lewis let his guard down, a shadow shot past above his head. It was the guide goblin aggressively lunging towards the old wizard. A club came crashing down on the old man, its head splattered with blood. Lewis stood frozen, still not understanding what was happening, as the guide goblin slowly turned to look at him with a dark gaze. He radiated a threatening aura. Answer me, human! Who are you? Trang whispered a reminder in Louis's ear. Remember this. They are created with evil thoughts, just like beasts. Luckily, I was able to enter the barrier on Cheonsan Mountain, and as soon as I stepped inside, it was like entering another world. A group of other goblins surrounded Lewis. "What's a human smell doing here?" "But he smells exactly like us." Trang quietly warned him. "Master, be careful. They don't have the same morals as humans." Lewis nodded in response. "I know." He thought to himself, "I'm guessing he won't do anything to me right now because of Kun Khan's fang, but I have no idea when they might turn on me." Lewis remained cautious, quietly following behind the guide goblin. After a while, they arrived before a mountain. The goblin spoke up. "We're here. This is the summit of Cheonsan Mountain." Luen, not paying attention to his surroundings, wondered, "There's still another peak up there, isn't there?" Suddenly, the entire ground began to shake, startling him. Hakan stood towering over Luen, which confused him. "This isn't the summit, but that's a goblin." He introduced himself. "I am the leader, Hakan. Human, I hear you possess the holy relic of Kun Khan." Lewis's jaw was still hanging open, his mind racing in shock. "Is he that much bigger than the other goblins?" Hakan spoke with some cheerfulness. "We welcome you as a guest. I've decided not to tear you to shreds and feed your corpse to the eagles. Who are you?" Luen, regaining his composure, replied, "I thought I already explained this at the gate, but I am the one chosen by Kun Khan's fang." Hearing this, Hakan looked slightly displeased. "Lies. That is not an item a human can handle." Luen was insistent. "But it's the truth." He then took out a large fang and held it up. "I can show you." Hakan burst out laughing. "An interesting human. I could smell our kind on you." "And I also smell the scent of power." Lewis didn't deny it, admitting confidently, "That's right. I'm pretty strong." Hakan's voice softened a little. "Then answer me, human. Who are you?" Luen was about to answer but paused for a moment to signal Trang. Then he asked Hakan, "Do you know of Dracogonia? That is the name of a dragon that lives on this Cheonsan mountain." Hakan was shocked and shouted, "How do you know that name?" Lewis replied calmly, "I heard it from Kingram." He was shocked yet again. "Kingram? He's still alive?" Lewis explained, "He is living as a relic in my academy. I guess you could say he's considered one of the professors?" He smirked and asked Hakan again, "You're curious about who I am, aren't you?" Lewis began his introduction, but much grander this time. "I am the friend of Kingram, who was once the leader of the Cheonsan Mountain Summit. I am also the one chosen by Kun Khan's fang, and I am the inheritor of the world-destroying power of Draka." Lewis, with his small body, stood before the massive goblin and stated his name. "My name is Louis Adele. With all of that, do you still plan to crush me and feed my corpse to the eagles?" Hakan broke into a smile as bright as sunshine. "We will welcome you with open arms, human." Louis couldn't believe his ears, sweating profusely, shocked by the thunderous cheers. Did he just say he would welcome me? Trang spoke seriously. "The goblins have a rite of passage, even when welcoming newcomers. If you want to be welcomed, you must prove your own worth." It stared intently at Lewis as it gave its solemn warning. Omerta appeared before him, while Trang explained that the rite was arm wrestling. Omerta flexed his muscles excitedly. "I am Omerta, son of Omeru Khan. Are you the human we are to welcome?" Lewis was panicking internally. "Are you telling me this giant is my opponent?" "I think there's been a mistake." The two of them got into position amidst the roars of the other goblins. "Crush that human, Omerta," Lewis asked Trang nervously. "If I lose the arm wrestling match, they won't actually throw me to the eagles, will they?" It just gave a forced smile. "I'm not so sure about that." The two began to focus, preparing for the match. Luen thought for a moment. "It's true this giant goblin is here to intimidate me, but that doesn't mean I should just rush in blindly. A match between a goblin and a human, it sounds ridiculous. But I also have special powers granted by a relic. Ever since I got Kun Khan's fang, my strength has increased by 1,000. Now my strength is at 3,520. This might be possible." Omerta commented, "I didn't think you were an ordinary human. The feel of your hand is completely different. Even though you're human, I won't go easy on you." Luen grew excited as well and challenged back, "That's right! Try to defeat me once and for all!" Another goblin stood between the two as a referee, shouting, "Get ready!" before yelling, "Begin!" to start the match. As soon as it started, Lewis tensed up, flexing his strength so much that his biceps bulged and tore his sleeve. Seeing this, Omerta paused for a moment, surprised by the sight. Amidst the cheers of the other goblins, neither was giving an inch. Lewis looked exhausted, his face scrunched in pain. Is it over already? Then, with a determined shout, Louis showed his resolve. This is my last chance! But just as the hairy goblin psyched himself up, Omerta defeated Louis with ease. He was completely shocked at how quickly he had lost, his face turning pale. The referee simultaneously declared Omerta the winner. Louis flopped onto the ground, sighing. I lost, even though I gave it my all. He worried, his hands trembling. So am I going to be thrown to the eagles to be eaten now? While Louis was in a daze, the referee spoke up. Get up, human. You managed to hold your own, even against Omerta, the most skilled warrior of Heavenly Mountain. That's truly something to be proud of. Louis thanked him for the compliment. At the same time, the system announced a new quest, noting that the goblins of Heavenly Mountain deeply respect strength. Trang also praised him. You did well. You've won the support of the goblins. Louis questioned him. You didn't tell me this was going to happen, did you? You just said it took Draka 17 years to beat Omerta, right? I'll do it in a month. As soon as the arm wrestling match ended, a feast had been prepared on the small mountaintop. Louis was amazed. It's hard to believe goblins are such good cooks. But Trang took it another way. I know the food has a very strong smell. The smell is so... He shook his head to show that wasn't what he meant. Louis was also quite curious. But why do the goblins here live so secluded in this monastery? His face grew serious, a bit worried. Looking at the goblins, he thought, somehow I have a feeling I'm going to overcome. Something more important than this quest. Omerta walked over and called out to Louis. Strong human. He turned his head and greeted Omerta. The goblin asked him directly, what are you planning to do with the fang of our first chief? Louis didn't understand and asked, what can I do with it? Omerta made an offer. If you want, I can help you make a weapon fit for a human. Louis was stunned by Omerta's offer. What? Louis remembered when he was still in the cave. He held Kun Khan's fang and showed it to Trang, asking, what is this? Trang began to explain enthusiastically. This is the main source of power. Whoever in the August tribe inherits it will become the strongest. But Louis cut him off. I mean, what is it used for? Trang explained. Ungale's scepter and Mossi's scales have very clear uses. Louis thought differently, imagining the two items being used as a pointer stick. Behold the magic pointer, Trang advised him. Just hold on to it for now and figure it out later. It will only help you increase your power. Louis nodded eagerly in agreement. Back in the present, Omerta smiled brightly. If you want, I can make it for you. A weapon for a human. In his heart, Louis made a decision. I have it, but I don't know how to use it. This is an unexpected opportunity. Omerta examined Kun Khan's fang. It was so heavy and hard that it seemed no one could possibly work with it. But for Omezusira's iron trap, it's entirely possible. Trang seemed to understand. An iron trap is just like a human blacksmith. Omerta turned and asked Louis, do you have any ideas for a special kind of weapon, human? After thinking for a moment, he made a decision. So, you can help me make exactly what I need? Half a month had passed since Louis arrived at Heavenly Mountain. He was thinking while hiding in a bush when a goblin shouted at him and pointed in one direction. Over there, human! Louis leaped out. Quickly, let me handle it! He reflected on that period of time. I helped the people of the August tribe hunt. They spent a lot of time training me in things I couldn't do. Louis, panting but happy, opened the system to check. However, the main quest that took up most of my time was something else. Louis was arm wrestling as Trang announced the results. 15 losses in 15 matches! In his arm wrestling match with Omerta, Louis couldn't help but grumble, Lost again. Is this really happening to me? Trang encouraged him. Keep it up, master. You're getting better. Omerta also had praise for Louis. That's right, human. You're gradually learning to use your strength more effectively. He also thanked him for the compliment. Thank you. I feel like I'm improving, little by little. Louis had now learned how to use his strength properly. He walked away, leaving a challenge behind. Before I leave this place, I have to defeat Omerta. Louis teased him. Are you hesitating, Omerta? The goblin quickly denied it. Not at all, human. In arm wrestling, you don't stand a chance against me. A few days later, during a regular arm wrestling match, Omerta was stunned as his hand was slammed down by Louis. Trang also announced the results, still in disbelief. 17 matches, 16 losses, 1 win. Louis leaped up, raising his arms in celebration and shouting, I won! At the same time, a notification appeared on the system. Lewis had completed the mission and received a reward. Omerta was impressed. "You just keep surprising me." "I lost, young Master Adele." Lewis rubbed his wrist and asked him, "This is the first time you've called me by my name like that, isn't it, Omerta?" Omerta turned and walked inside. "It seems you're ready now." Lewis didn't understand and asked back, "Ready for what?" Then he suddenly remembered. "Oh, is it finished?" Omerta called him over. He spoke up. "Actually, it's been finished for a long time. I've been waiting for this moment to give it to you." Lewis was a little confused. "Then why didn't you give it to me even though it was done?" Omeraz explained, "I was waiting until you could defeat me. If you couldn't win, I probably wouldn't have given you back the fang. Kun Khan's fang is a very important item to us." Hearing this, Luen was speechless, thinking to himself, "Why does this feel like I'm being robbed right to my face?" After searching, Omeraz handed the item to him. "Here, this is yours." Luen was stunned when he saw the item. The system also appraised it as the bear paw, made from Kun Khan's fang and imbued with additional power. Luen tried on the bear paw. A bear paw gauntlet with Kun Khan's fang set inside it? It would definitely be the most comfortable for me. A melee mage. Trang quickly asked, "How is it, Luen?" Omeraz also asked, "What do you think of my creation?" "I made it with the most perfect mold for you." Luen rejoiced silently. "Awesome. It's not just 2,000 strength, it might be even stronger." He asked Omeraz, "Can you gather all the warriors of the heavenly mountain?" The gathered ogres were incredibly noisy. "A strong human wants to challenge all of us to an arm wrestling match? Even though he defeated Omeraz, he's still wounding our pride. But against an enemy like that, an event like this, they were all more than ready to answer him. "Welcome!" From the ogre tribe's perspective, this was an arrogant challenge. They revere strength and love competition. They seem to appreciate my competitive spirit. An ogre's son from below cheered with all his might, "Go, Dad, go!" Trang, standing to one side, recalled the past. "This really brings back memories. Draka did this once too. Although he fought 17 out of 35 opponents, your case is completely different." Luen thought otherwise. "Humans can't live as long as dragons. I have to hurry." But his inner thoughts were different. "Just yesterday I was saying this was impossible. But with Kun Khan's fang bear paw in my hand, I feel like I can't lose." Amidst the noise, the referee's voice rang out. "Ready?" Immediately after the referee's start call, the two lunged at each other. Luen swiftly slammed the ogre's arm onto the table in a flash. After a while, Omeraz asked, "Shall we go back, young master?" Luen replied, "Right now we need to go to Leberdin." He quickly thanked him. "You've given us a memorable experience." "Thank you, young master." Luen looked up at them without a word, just a bright smile. Then he held out his hand, but Omeraz didn't understand his intention. "Do you want another arm wrestling match, even after defeating all of us?" Luen shook his head, which confused him a little. "It's not for arm wrestling." Then he took Omeraz's hand, much to his surprise. "It's called a handshake," Luen replied gently. "It's a human way of greeting." He calmly explained, "When you meet someone, and when you say goodbye to a friend." As Luen walked away, he waved to the ogres and left them with his words, "See you later" is a type of farewell.